The night Victor Hale threw his ex-wife at me like a piece of unwanted furniture. He believed he was punishing both of us. He stood beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Halcyon Grand, one hand wrapped around a glass of 12-year-old scotch, and announced to 300 guests that Evelyn Cross no longer deserved the penthouse, the cars, the staff, or even the Hale name. Then he pointed at me, the man serving champagne in a borrowed tuxedo, and smiled as if he had just invented cruelty. "You always defended her, Noah. So take her. Let the bankrupt waiter support the useless woman." The room laughed. Evelyn did not. She stood beside the marble staircase in a silver evening gown, her face pale but perfectly still, while security guards dropped 2 suitcases at her feet. One contained clothing. The other contained the notebooks Victor had mocked for 6 years. He had no idea those notebooks were worth more than his entire company. Neither did I. "Not yet." Victor lifted his glass toward me. "Consider her your reward for loyalty." I looked at Evelyn. She looked back at me. Then she picked up one suitcase, walked across the ballroom, and placed the other in my hand. "Do you have somewhere I can sleep?" she asked. Her voice did not tremble. That was the moment Victor Hale made me rich. But before the money, before the factories, before the headlines called me the most dangerous private investor on the East Coast, there was only a woman standing in the rain with nowhere to go, and a man with $43 in his checking account pretending he was not terrified. I had known Evelyn for 8 years. I met her before Victor did, back when the 3 of us were students at Westbridge University. Victor arrived on campus in a red Ferrari, California. His father had bought him for passing summer economics. Evelyn arrived on a city bus carrying a cardboard portfolio case and a coffee she had made at home. I arrived with a mechanic's uniform under my jacket because I worked mornings at my uncle's garage before attending classes. Victor was born inside the kind of money that made people laugh too loudly at his jokes. Evelyn was born with the kind of mind that made professors stop mid-sentence. I was born with nothing except a stubborn refusal to stay that way. For 2 years, Evelyn and I were inseparable. We studied in the basement of the engineering library. She designed systems. I figured out how to build them cheaply. She could stare at a machine and see every wasted movement. I could listen to an engine and tell which bolt was loose. People assumed we were dating. We never were. I loved her. She never knew. Then Victor discovered that Evelyn had created a thermal recovery design capable of cutting industrial energy costs by nearly 30%. He did not understand the engineering. He understood the money. He began appearing everywhere. Coffee outside her morning lecture. A driver waiting after laboratory sessions. Invitations to charity dinners. Introductions to executives. Promises of a research division with her name on the door. Victor made wealth look like oxygen. I made poverty look like hard work. She chose him. I told her I was happy for her. It was the cleanest lie I had ever spoken. After graduation, Victor married Evelyn in a ceremony featured in 3 society magazines. His father gave them a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Evelyn gave Victor something far more valuable. She joined Hale Industrial and spent 6 years solving problems the company had failed to solve for decades. Victor received the awards. Victor appeared on financial networks. Victor shook hands with senators. Evelyn stayed in the laboratory. Whenever I asked whether she was happy, she gave me the same careful smile. "I'm building something important." I should have asked whether she was safe. By then, I had fallen in a different direction. My uncle died. The garage closed under debt. I tried launching a maintenance company with 2 partners who emptied the accounts and disappeared. By 31, I was repairing commercial kitchen equipment during the day and working private events at night. That was how I ended up carrying champagne at Victor's engagement gala. His second engagement gala. The divorce from Evelyn had been finalized that morning. Victor did not wait until evening to replace her. Her name was Celeste Arden, the daughter of a private equity billionaire who owned shipping terminals, hotel groups, and enough politicians to fill a banquet hall. Celeste was tall, beautiful, and sharp in the way polished glass was sharp. She did not design anything. She acquired it. She stood beside Victor wearing a white diamond necklace while Evelyn watched from the edge of the ballroom. I had not known Evelyn would be there. She had not known the event was an engagement party. Victor had told her she needed to attend a board celebration and sign final separation documents. When she arrived, she found photographs of Victor and Celeste projected across a wall 30 feet high. The first photograph showed them kissing in Monaco. The date printed beneath it was 7 months before Victor had filed for divorce. Evelyn stared at it for 3 seconds. Then she turned toward Victor. "You brought me here for this?" Victor smiled. "No. I brought you here because Celeste wanted complete transparency before our marriage. Celeste stepped forward, her diamonds catching the light. Victor told me you struggled to understand boundaries, she said. This should make the transition easier. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the leather folder in her hand. What transition? Victor handed his scotch to a passing server and walked closer. The penthouse belongs to Hale Holdings. The vehicles belong to Hale Holdings. Your accounts were reviewed this afternoon. My accounts? You have been living on company property while challenging the divorce settlement. That ends tonight. Evelyn opened the folder. I watched her eyes move across the first page. What is this? A repayment agreement, Victor said. 6 years of unauthorized research expenses, private laboratory use, travel, equipment, housing, and staff. I worked for the company. You were compensated. You paid me $80,000 a year. Several guests laughed quietly. Victor's smile widened. More than generous for someone whose projects never produced revenue. That was another lie. Hale Industrial's operating margin had nearly doubled after Evelyn joined. 4 factories that had been marked for closure became profitable. A turbine cooling redesign she created saved the company more than $200 million over 3 years. But Victor had placed every patent under corporate ownership. At least, that was what he believed. Evelyn turned the next page. You are claiming I owe Hale Industrial $11 million? $11,400,000, Victor corrected. But I'm willing to forgive the amount. The room became quieter. Victor enjoyed silence. It made him feel powerful. Evelyn looked up. In exchange for what? All notebooks, design archives, prototypes, passwords, storage devices, and intellectual property created during our marriage. Her face changed then, not fear, understanding. Victor was not humiliating her because he hated her. He was doing it because he was afraid of what she knew. Celeste crossed her arms. This is a generous the folder. No. One word. Victor's jaw tightened. I had seen that expression before. At university, it appeared whenever a professor praised someone's. No? He repeated. The notebooks are mine. Everything you created while married to me belongs to me. No, Evelyn said. Everything I created under a Hale employment contract may belong to Hale Industrial. My independent research does not. Victor glanced towards a silver-haired man near the stage. Marcus Vane, Hale Industrial's chief legal officer, stepped forward with the confidence of someone who billed by the minute. The marital property clause is broad, Marcus said. You signed it voluntarily. I signed a prenup protecting Hale family assets. It does not transfer my personal intellectual property. Marcus smiled without warmth. A court may disagree, then let a court decide. The laughter had stopped. Victor's face darkened. You think you can fight me? I think I can read. A few people looked down to hide their reactions. Victor hated being mocked more than he hated losing. He stepped closer until only a foot separated them. I gave you everything. Evelyn's voice remained calm. You gave me a room without windows and put your name on everything I built. I made you relevant. You made me invisible. The words struck harder than shouting. Victor looked around the ballroom and realized people were watching him lose control. His expression smoothed almost instantly. Then he punished her. He clicked his fingers. 2 security guards carried Evelyn's suitcases from a service corridor and dropped them onto the marble. You want independence? Victor asked. Take it. Evelyn looked at the bags. What did you do? I had the staff pack what belongs to you. You went through my office? My personal files were inside. Then perhaps you should have accepted my offer. Victor turned to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption. Divorce can make ordinary people behave irrationally. Celeste touched his arm. Victor, be kind. Her voice was sweet enough to rot teeth. He nodded as though considering mercy. Then his eyes found me. I had stopped moving. A tray of untouched champagne rested in my hand. Victor recognized me at once. He had always recognized people he considered beneath him. Noah Reid, he said. I heard your company failed. Several faces turned toward me. I set the tray on a nearby table. It did, and now you serve drinks. Tonight I do. Victor looked delighted. He remembered that Evelyn and I had been friends. He also remembered that I had once challenged him in an engineering seminar and proved his financial model depended on numbers he had copied incorrectly. Men like Victor stored humiliation like ammunition. He pointed toward Evelyn. You always defended her, Noah, so take her. Let the bankrupt waiter support the useless woman. The room laughed. Evelyn did not. She walked toward me, placed 1 suitcase in my hand, and asked whether I had somewhere she could sleep. I wanted to punch Victor. Instead, I picked up the suitcase. My apartment has a couch. Victor raised his glass. Perfect. The failed mechanic and the failed wife. I looked at him. Careful, Victor. His eyebrows rose. Was that a threat? No. I glanced at the folder beneath Evelyn's arm. It was advice. We walked out together. No one stopped us. The rain had started while we were inside. It came down in cold silver sheets, striking the pavement and turning the city lights into blurred ribbons. The valet ignored us. He had been instructed to. Evelyn stood beneath the hotel awning, staring at the black cars pulling away from the curb. "Do you still drive that truck?" she asked. I almost laughed. "The Ford?" "The one with the door that only opens from the outside." I fixed the door. "Good." The heater stopped working. Of course it did. That was the first crack in her composure. Not tears. A tiny exhausted smile. My truck was parked 6 blocks away because the hotel charged more for one night of parking than I earned from the event. We walked through the rain, each carrying a suitcase, while Evelyn's silver dress darkened at the hem. People stared. She looked like a fallen queen. I looked like the man stealing her luggage. When we reached the truck, I opened the passenger door. She climbed inside, gathered the wet fabric of her gown, and leaned her head against the seat. I loaded the suitcases into the back. For a few seconds, I stood in the rain with both hands gripping the tailgate. 8 years. 8 years since she chose Victor. 8 years since I buried everything I wanted to say. Now she was sitting in my truck with nowhere else to go. It should have felt like fate. It felt like failure. I climbed behind the wheel. The engine coughed twice before starting. Evelyn looked at the cracked dashboard. "You fixed the door but not the heater. I have priorities." "What are they?" "Apparently rescuing wealthy ex-wives." "I'm not wealthy." "Right. I have $14 in cash." I looked at her. She opened a tiny silver purse and showed me 3 bills. "Victor froze the joint accounts yesterday. My personal savings disappeared this afternoon." "He stole it?" "He transferred it under a reimbursement claim. Marcus found a clause giving Hale Industrial temporary recovery rights during a dispute." "How much?" "A little over $600,000. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You had $600,000? I saved most of my salary." "You made $80,000 a year and saved $600,000? I don't like shopping." I glanced at the dress. Victor's stylist chose this. "I hate silver. What color do you like?" She looked out the window. "Green." I drove toward Queens. My apartment was above a closed laundromat on a street where delivery motorcycles screamed past at every hour. The building smelled like old detergent, fried onions, and wet concrete. Evelyn climbed 3 flights of stairs without complaining. Inside, I turned on the lights. The apartment contained 1 bedroom, 1 couch, 1 folding table, 2 mismatched chairs, and enough repair equipment to make it look as though a hardware store had exploded. She stood in the center of the room. "This is nice. You were always a bad liar." "It has personality. The ceiling leaks." "Personality." I gave her a towel and one of my old college shirts. She disappeared into the bathroom. While she changed, I checked my bank account. $43.19. Rent was due in 4 days. My truck needed a fuel pump. The restaurant chain that owed me for 3 months of repair work had declared bankruptcy that morning. I had offered Evelyn a couch because it was the right thing to do. I had no idea how I would feed both of us. The bathroom door opened. She stepped out wearing my faded Westbridge shirt and black leggings. Her hair was damp. Without the gown, jewelry, and makeup, she looked like the woman from the engineering library again. Older, tired. "Still Evelyn." I found a packet of instant noodles in the cupboard. "Dinner?" She looked at it. "Do you have eggs?" Then we feast. I boiled water while she opened the smaller suitcase. Clothes filled one side. Documents filled the other. She removed 4 black notebooks and placed them on the folding table. The covers were worn. Colored tabs stuck out from the pages. Victor had mocked those notebooks in front of 300 people. I remembered earlier versions from university. "You still write everything by hand. Paper doesn't get hacked. Paper gets stolen. That is why these are incomplete." I turned from the stove. "What do you mean?" "The notebooks contain pieces. No single book contains a full design." "How many designs?" 11. The noodles softened in the pot. I lowered the heat. "What kind of designs?" She hesitated. Then she opened the first notebook. The pages were covered in diagrams, equations, manufacturing sequences, and dense handwritten notes. I recognized heat exchangers, compression chambers, turbine housings, and something that resembled a modular power unit. My exhaustion disappeared. I moved closer. "What is that?" "A closed-loop thermal conversion system." In normal language, it turns waste heat into usable electricity. Factories already do that. Badly. She opened another notebook and aligned 2 pages side by side. System. Equipment discards. It can operate inside older industrial plants without replacing their core machinery. How efficient. In laboratory conditions, 41% recovery. I stared at her. That's impossible. Victor said the same thing. Did you build it? A small prototype. Where? She looked toward the second suitcase. My pulse changed. I pulled it onto the table and unzipped it. Beneath 2 sweaters and a pair of shoes sat a metal case no larger than a toaster. Its surface was scratched. Copper tubing ran through a sealed center chamber. A handmade control board occupied one side. I knew machines not at Evelyn's level, but enough to recognize elegance. This was not a science project. This was a product. Victor knows about this. He knows I was working on heat recovery. He does not know the prototype works. Why not? Because the night I completed the first stable run, I found his messages to Celeste. She said it without emotion. That made it worse. I looked back at the device. What happened during the test? It powered the laboratory's lighting system for 6 hours using heat from one industrial dryer. One dryer? One. How much electricity? Enough to reduce the dryer's net energy consumption by 28%. The room became very quiet. Energy was the largest operating expense in dozens of industries. Food processing, ceramics, steel finishing, textiles, commercial laundry, chemical plants. A machine that recovered nearly a third of wasted power could turn dying factories profitable. Victor had thrown it out in a suitcase. I sat down. Who owns the patent? No one. I submitted a preliminary application under a research entity I created before marrying Victor. What entity? Cross Meridian Labs. Does Victor know it exists? No. Does Marcus? No. Does anyone? My former patent professor helped prepare the documents. He died last year. My mind began moving. For months it had been trapped in survival. Fuel, debt, repairs. But the old part of me, the part that once built business plans beside Evelyn in the university basement, woke up hungry. Why didn't you commercialize it? I needed a manufacturing model. I can build one. I needed suppliers. I needed someone who understands installation inside old facilities. I looked at her. She looked at me. The noodles boiled over. I jumped up and killed the burner. Evelyn laughed. It started quietly, then broke out of her in one sharp, disbelieving burst. She covered her mouth, but she could not stop. I stared at the ruined noodles. This was our last packet. That made her laugh harder. For the first time that night, she looked alive. We ate the noodles anyway. At midnight, we cleared the folding table. At 1 in the morning, she showed me the prototype's internal flow sequence. At 2, I calculated a rough manufacturing cost using parts from industrial refrigeration suppliers. At 3, we argued over whether the first commercial unit should target textile dryers or commercial laundries. At 3:20, I remembered the laundromat beneath my apartment. It had closed 8 months earlier because energy costs had destroyed its margins. I still had the owner's number. At 3:31, I called him. He answered with a curse. Who is this? Mr. Bell, it's Noah Reid. It's the middle of the night, I know. You owe me half a month's storage rent, I know. Then why are you calling? Because I can reopen your laundromat. Silence. Then a tired laugh. You drunk? High? No, then you're stupid. Probably. But I have a machine that could cut the dryer's electricity use by more than 20%. Another silence. Longer this time. That's not possible. Evelyn leaned toward the phone. Tell him we will prove it for free. I repeated her offer. Mr. Bell sighed. You break anything, you pay for it. With what money? I asked. He laughed again. Fair point. You still have the basement key? Yes. Then do whatever insane thing you're planning. The call ended. I looked at Evelyn. She held out her hand. What? A contract. For what? Partnership. I almost smiled. You have $14. You have $43.19. Then you're the majority investor. I stared at her hand. 8 years earlier, she had chosen Victor's certainty over my struggle. I could have resented her. Part of me had. But sitting across from her in a leaking apartment at 3 in the morning, I understood something I had been too proud to see. Victor had never offered certainty. He had offered a cage decorated with money. I took her hand. Equal partners, Noah. Equal. I designed the system. And I own the folding table. She looked at me for a long moment. Equal, she said. We shook on it. At 6 in the morning, we carried the prototype downstairs. The laundromat was dark, dusty, and cold. Rows of stainless steel washers faced rows of industrial gas dryers. A faded sign near the counter still advertised wash and fold service for $1 per pound. I opened the utility room. Evelyn inspected the main exhaust line. It failed city inspection twice. Why? I pointed toward a corroded junction. That, she frowned. That is worse than I expected. We spent the morning cleaning. By noon, I had removed the exhaust manifold from the largest dryer. Evelyn measured temperatures, airflow, and pressure. We drove to a salvage yard in Brooklyn and bought copper pipe, insulation, valves, and a used inverter with nearly all the money we had. At the register, my card declined. I checked the total, $61. I had forgotten about a scheduled phone payment. Evelyn placed her $14 on the counter. The cashier looked at us. You're still short. I removed my watch. It was not expensive. My uncle had given it to me before he died. The salvage yard owner examined it. $20. It's worth more. Then sell it somewhere else. I looked at the watch one final time. Evelyn touched my wrist. No, we need the inverter. We need your watch. The watch doesn't generate electricity. It matters to you. So does this. I placed it on the counter. 20. The owner took it. We carried the parts out together. Evelyn said nothing until we reached the truck. Then she opened one of her notebooks and wrote a line on the inside cover. What was that? A debt. You don't owe me, I know. She closed the book. That is why I intend to repay it. For 4 days, we worked almost without sleep. I rebuilt the dryer assembly while Evelyn modified the prototype. We ate cheap bread, canned soup, and coffee strong enough to dissolve metal. At night, she slept on the couch beneath a blanket I had owned since college. Victor called her 9 times. She ignored every call. Marcus sent 2 emails demanding immediate surrender of all research property. She forwarded them to a new address and wrote one reply. My independent work does not belong to Hale Industrial. On the 5th day, Victor left a voicemail. Evelyn played it through the apartment speaker. His voice filled the room. You're embarrassing yourself. Return the notebooks, sign the agreement, and I may arrange a modest apartment for you. This performance with Noah will end the moment he realizes what you cost. Evelyn stopped the message. I tightened a bolt on the converter housing. What do you cost? Apparently $11,400,000. Expensive. I warned you. My phone rang. It was Mr. Bell. I'm coming by tonight, he said. If the machine doesn't work, I'm changing the locks. It will work. You sound confident. I'm practicing. At 7 that evening, we started the dryer. The old drum turned with a metallic groan. Heat surged through the exhaust system. Evelyn watched 3 gauges while I monitored the inverter. Nothing happened. The output display remained dark. Mr. Bell folded his arms. I knew it time, Evelyn said. A minute passed, then 2. The prototype began to vibrate, not violently, steadily. A green indicator flickered once, then vanished. My stomach dropped. Evelyn reached toward the bypass valve. Pressure is too low. The exhaust fan is at full speed. The chamber is losing heat. Where? She placed her fingers near the rear seal and pulled them back. There. I shut down the dryer. The gasket had cracked. Mr. Bell shook his head. That's enough. I can replace it, I said. With what? More parts from a junkyard? Give us 1 hour. I've given you 5 days. Evelyn looked at the broken seal. Then she removed the black hair tie from her wrist. No, I said. It's silicone. It'll melt. Not at this temperature. She wrapped it around the narrow junction, then covered it with the remaining insulation tape. Mr. Bell stared at her. That's your scientific solution? It is our temporary scientific solution. We restarted the dryer. The drum turned. The chamber warmed. The green light flickered. Then it stayed on. The inverter display came alive. Numbers climbed. 500 watts, 900, 1,400, 2,100. The fluorescent lights above us brightened as the system fed power back into the laundromat's internal circuit. Mr. Bell unfolded his arms. The output stabilized. Evelyn watched the meter. I watched her. How much? I asked. 26.8% net recovery. Bell stepped closer. You're telling me that little box is giving me back more than a quarter of what the dryer uses? Yes. For one dryer? Yes. He looked across the room at the other machines. I have 24. My mouth went dry. How much did your electricity and gas cost during your last full year? I asked. Just over $300,000. And if we reduce combined energy consumption by 20%, he did the calculation slowly. 60,000 per year, I said. For this dump? Mr. Bell looked at the converter, then at us. How much? Evelyn opened her mouth. I spoke first. $20,000 per unit installed, plus 10% of verified annual savings for 5 years. Her head turned toward me. Mr. Bell barked a laugh. I can't afford 20,000, Mort gauged. You also own Bell Hospitality Linen. His expression changed. I knew his business. Hotels sent sheets and towels to a larger facility in New Jersey. The laundromat had been only the retail side. How many industrial dryers at the linen plant? I asked. 80. Install 10 units as a pilot. No upfront charge. We take 50% of documented savings until the equipment cost is recovered, then 10% for 5 years. Mr. Bell stared at me. Evelyn stared harder. Finally, he held out his hand. One condition. What? You put the hair tie version in a proper metal box. I shook his hand, agreed. At 9:15 that night, Mr. Bell emailed us 12 months of utility records from the linen plant. At 9:40, Evelyn entered the numbers into a spreadsheet. At 10, we projected annual savings from 10 units at $182,000. Our repayment share during the first year would be more than $90,000. For 10 units, the plant had 80 dryers. Hale Industrial operated factories with thousands of heat-producing machines. Victor had thrown away the woman who could change the energy economics of modern manufacturing. My phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent me a photograph. It showed Victor and Celeste leaving a restaurant together. Beneath it was a message. Enjoy playing hero. Evelyn will come back when she gets hungry. I showed it to her. She read it once. Then she opened her notebook and turned to a clean page. What are you doing? I asked. Calculating how much it will cost to buy Hale Industrial. I laughed. She did not. The look in her eyes made the sound die in my throat. Evelyn. She wrote down Victor's company valuation from memory, subtracted its outstanding debt, identified 3 weak subsidiaries, and circled a number. We don't need to buy all of it, she said. We only need to make the market understand what the company is worth without my work. A cold sensation moved through me. Can you do that? She looked toward the prototype humming beneath the laundromat. Noah, Victor believes he threw me away. She closed the notebook. Let's show him what he discarded. At that exact moment, the prototype's data screen refreshed. The estimated recovery rate climbed from 26.8% to 31.4%. Evelyn went completely still. That's impossible, I whispered. She moved closer to the display. No, she said, it means the adaptive loop is learning. The machine was improving itself. And somewhere across Manhattan, Victor Hale was celebrating the greatest mistake of his life. The adaptive loop changed everything. Until that moment, Cross Meridian's system had been a machine. After that moment, it became a platform. Evelyn pulled the data cable from the prototype, connected it to my old laptop, and opened a diagnostic window filled with temperature curves, pressure maps, and recovery cycles. The converter had adjusted its own valve timing based on the dryer's exhaust pattern. It was not thinking. It was doing something more useful. It was learning what waste looked like. Can it repeat the improvement? I asked. It already has. She highlighted 3 overlapping graphs. The first cycle recovered 26.8%. The second reached 29.1%. The third reached 31.4%. What happens on the 10th? I don't know. That is not comforting. It is to me. She leaned closer to the screen. Every trace of exhaustion had disappeared from her face. This was the Evelyn I remembered from Westbridge, the woman who could forget food, sleep, and human conversation when a problem opened in front of her. The existing recovery systems are static, she said. They are designed around one expected heat profile. Real factories are not static. Temperatures rise and fall. Loads change. Operators slow machines down, speed them up, shut them off, restart them. That variability destroys efficiency. And yours adjusts. Ours. The word hit me harder than it should have. She pointed at the screen. It adjusts. That means one core unit could serve different industries with modified housings instead of completely different systems. Textiles, ceramics, commercial food processing, glass, steel finishing. We stared at each other. Then we both spoke at once. Data. We needed more of it. One laundromat dryer was a beginning, not proof. Investors did not fund beginnings. Customers did not rebuild factories around beginnings. We needed thousands of operating hours across multiple machines under different loads, with savings verified by someone who had no reason to help us. Mr. Bell had 80 dryers at his New Jersey linen facility. Victor had no idea he had just given us the perfect test site. By 6 the next morning, we had drafted a pilot agreement on my laptop. It was not elegant. It contained enough legal language copied from old service contracts to make both of us nervous. Bell read it over coffee at a diner near his building. He wore a brown suit with a grease stain near one pocket and moved his lips when he read. You two wrote this? Yes, I said. It shows. Evelyn folded her hands. Which part concerns you? Only until the equipment cost is recovered. Only until the equipment cost. We document every component, labor hour, permit fee, and installation expense. He looked at me. You always this honest? No. That helps. He turned another page. You want access to my full utility data. For baseline verification, Evelyn said, you want permission to publish performance results without identifying your company unless you consent. You want to modify 10 of my dryers. Temporarily, I said. And if one catches fire, we carry liability. With what insurance? Silence. Mr. Bell tapped the paper with one thick finger. That is what I thought. He pushed the agreement back across the table. For one terrible second, I believed the meeting was over. Then he reached inside his jacket and removed a business card. Call this woman. Dana Brooks. She handles commercial coverage for half the laundries in the state. I took the card. You are still interested? I watched one broken machine lower my energy draw while held together by a hair tie. Of course I am interested, Evelyn almost smiled. Mr. Bell pointed at her. But I want a proper prototype before it enters my plant. Steel enclosure, emergency shutoff, pressure relief. No homemade wires. That will take money, I said. That sounds like your problem. How long will you hold the pilot slot? 1 week. We cannot build 10 units in 1 week. You do not need 10. Build one that looks real. Prove it on 3 dryers. Then we talk about the other 7. He stood and buttoned his jacket. 1 week, Noah. After that, I sign a 5-year efficiency contract with Rion Energy. Evelyn looked up sharply. Rion? You know them? I know their equipment. Then you know they are expensive. They are also inefficient. They have insurance. He left a $20 bill beneath his coffee cup and walked out. The name Rion Energy stayed on the table between us. Rion was one of Hale Industrial's strategic partners. More importantly, Victor sat on its advisory board. He knows about Bell Hospitality Leanin, I said. He may not. Victor knows every commercial account that can become leverage. Evelyn reached for her phone. There is another possibility. What? Mr. Bell contacted Rion before tonight. Rion quoted him a contract. He is using us to pressure them. That would be smart. Yes, you sound disappointed. I prefer opponents who are stupid. I turned Dana proper enclosure pressure certifications. We need insurance, a proper enclosure, pressure certificate units, and enough cash to survive until the pilot pays. Correct. We have $8 left. $8.19. Stop saying the 19 cents. It matters to the majority investor. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt awake. For years, every problem in my life had been small and suffocating: rent, fuel, late invoices, broken equipment. Now the problem was enormous. Enormous problems had edges. You could attack them. We started with insurance. Dana Brooks agreed to meet us that afternoon in a glass office overlooking Newark. She was in her 40s, dressed in navy, and had the expression of someone who had spent her career listening to business owners lie. She examined our photographs, wiring diagrams, and the draft pilot agreement. How much revenue does your company generate? She asked, I said. How many employees? 2. Years in operation? 1 day. She looked at Evelyn. Any patents? Completed safety testing? Internal only. Any certified manufacturing partner? Not yet. Dana closed the folder. No carrier will touch this. I leaned forward. There has to be a structure. There is. You partner with an established engineering firm, license the technology, and let them carry the risk. They take control, Evelyn said. Usually? No. Dana raised one eyebrow. That was fast. I have seen what happens when someone else controls my work. The room went quiet. Dana looked at her more carefully. You are Evelyn Cross. Evelyn's shoulders tightened. Yes. The Evelyn Cross? I don't know which one you mean. The thermal systems director from Hale Industrial, former director. Dana opened her laptop and searched. A photograph appeared on the screen. Victor stood at a podium accepting an Industry Innovation Award. Evelyn stood 6 feet behind him, nearly cropped from the frame. Dana read from an article. Hale Industrial credits Victor Hale's leadership with reducing plant energy use by 18% across 4 major facilities. She turned the screen around. Was that your work? Evelyn looked at the photograph. Yes. How much of it? All of it. Dana leaned back. That was the first time anyone outside our tiny circle saw the difference between Evelyn's public value and her real one. What exactly are you asking me to insure? She said. We spent the next hour explaining. Dana interrupted constantly. What pressure range? What failure mode? What maximum operating temperature? What materials? What emergency bypass? What installation standard? Evelyn answered every technical question without hesitation. I answered every practical one. By the end, Dana had stopped looking at us like desperate amateurs. She looked concerned. Not about failure. About missing something. There is one carrier, she said. Specialty Industrial. They insure prototypes for field testing. My pulse lifted. What would they require? A certified engineering review, third-party electrical inspection, a bond, and a premium paid up front. How much? Approximately $30,000. My pulse dropped. Dana closed the laptop. You are not insurable yet, because you asked for a structure. She wrote 3 names on a legal pad. These firms perform prototype certification. This bank issues small industrial bonds. This attorney specializes in intellectual property licensing. We are not licensing, Evelyn said. Then you need capital. We know. Dana tore off the page and handed it to me. Do you? As we left the building, my phone rang. The caller identification showed a name I'd not seen in 2 years. Daniel Mercer. One of my former business partners. The one who had emptied the account. I almost ignored it. Then I answered Noah. His voice was cheerful, too cheerful. Daniel, I heard you were working on something interesting. I stopped walking. Evelyn noticed. Who told you? A mutual friend. I don't have mutual friends with you. You have more than you think. What do you want? To help. I laughed once. Daniel continued as though I had thanked him. I represent a private investment group now. We fund industrial technology. Early stage, high risk, fast decisions. You stole $47,000 from me. That dispute was settled. You disappeared. The business was failing. You made it fail. Ancient history. It was 2 years ago. Then you should appreciate how much can change. He lowered his voice. I can put $500,000 into your company this week. The number stopped me. 500,000 solved everything immediate. Insurance, parts, payroll, a real workshop. Maybe 10. What do you want? I asked. No, 35. No, you haven't heard the terms. I heard your voice. I ended the call. Evelyn waited. Who was it? Daniel Mercer. Her expression hardened. She remembered him. What did he want? 40% of the company. For what? $500,000. She went still. We stood on the sidewalk while office workers moved around us. That would fund the pilot, she said. Yes, patent filings. Yes, then why did you refuse before discussing terms? Because Daniel does not invest. He enters buildings after someone else leaves a window open. You think Victor sent him. I think someone did. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Do not let pride make you poor twice. Beneath it was a photograph of the prototype inside the laundromat, taken through the front window. Evelyn read it. Her face changed. We need to move the machine. We drove back immediately. The laundromat door was locked. The alarm had not triggered. Nothing appeared disturbed. But the prototype's enclosure had been opened. One screw lay on the floor. The data cable was gone. Evelyn dropped to her knees beside the machine. They accessed the board. What could they take? The control architecture. Can they copy it? Not from the board alone. She removed the top plate and examined the memory module. Then she swore. I had never heard Evelyn swear before. What? The local cycle data is missing. How much? All of it. My stomach tightened. The adaptive loop's performance data was the first proof that the system learned. Someone had stolen it before we could secure it. I checked the rear entrance, windows, and utility room. No damage. Whoever entered had a key or knew how to bypass the lock. Mr. Bell arrived 20 minutes later. He denied giving access to anyone. Who else hasn't contractor? Name? Rian Facility Services. There it was. Rian. Victor's advisory company. Mr. Bell looked from me to Evelyn. You think Rian came in here? I think someone connected to them did, I said. He frowned. That makes no sense. They already know how heat recovery works. Evelyn stood. They do not know how ours works. Mr. Bell's face tightened. You told me this was protected. It is. Then why are you panicking? Because protected technology can still be stolen, she said. A patent lets you sue after someone takes it. It does not stop them from taking it. He looked at the open machine. You have until the end of the week. After that, I go with angry. Not afraid. That was worse. Customers tolerated risk when they believed risk belonged to someone else. Now our risk had entered his building. We carried the prototype upstairs. I locked it inside my apartment. Evelyn sat at the folding table and opened her notebooks. We need to file the full patent now. How much? With proper counsel, perhaps $25,000. We do not have $25,000. We cannot wait. What exactly did the thief steal? Cycle maps, valve timing, performance records. Enough to build a copy? No. Enough to know what matters? Yes. I paced once across the room. Daniel called minutes after Dana's meeting. Yes. He knew we needed money. Yes. He sent a photograph from the laundromat. Yes. So the offer was not an investment. 40% gives him access. And if we refused, they stole what they could. My phone rang again. Daniel. This time Evelyn nodded for me to answer. You damaged my property, I said. Daniel sighed. Noah, accusations are not productive. You broke into the laundromat. You should be more careful with valuable equipment. What did you take? Nothing you can prove. Evelyn wrote something on a page and turned it toward me. Keep him talking. I sat down. You offered $500,000. I did. Is it still available? A pause. Now you are thinking clearly. What does 40% include? Board representation, information rights, approval over major spending, and first refusal on future financing. Control, protection. Who is the investment group? Northquay Capital. I knew the name. A small private fund with no visible track record and a mailing address in Delaware. Who owns Northquay? Private investors. People with money. Evelyn wrote another question. I read it. Does Victor Hale know you called me? The line went silent. Only for a second. But the second told us everything. Daniel laughed. You still think your life revolves around Victor? No, I think yours does, his voice cooled. You failed once, Noah. You remember what that felt like, empty office, unpaid bills. Your uncle's watch in a pawn drawer. My blood went cold. I had not told Daniel about the watch, he continued. You have a chance to avoid that. Take the money. Build something small. Let professionals handle the rest. Evelyn looked at me, I understood. They were watching us closely. I want 50 million, I said. Daniel laughed. For what, 10%? You have no revenue. We have a working machine. You have a toy and a dead laundromat. Then why break in? The silence returned. I smiled. Daniel had always hated silence more than he hated insults. You are out of your depth, he said. Then stop swimming near me. I ended the call. Evelyn looked at the phone. He will report that we know Victor is involved. Good. Why is that good? Because people make mistakes when they think the trap has been noticed. We do not have a trap. We have the beginning of one. I opened the voicemail recorder. The entire call had been saved. Daniel had admitted nothing directly, but he had mentioned the watch. That detail mattered. Someone had followed us to the salvage yard. Someone had watched us surrender it. Someone wanted us to feel observed. Fear was the product. The investment offer was the price. I called the salvage yard. The owner answered after 6 rings. I sold the watch, he said before I could ask. Suit. Expensive shoes. Paid cash. How much? How much? 200. You bought it from me for 20. That is business. When? Yesterday. Did he give a name? Maybe. I need the recording. You need a warrant? I need 10 minutes. You need money. I looked at Evelyn. She opened her purse and removed the last of her cash. $4. I almost laughed. How much? I asked. 500. We don't have 500. Then you don't need the video. He hung up. The trail existed. We simply could not afford to follow it. That night, we reviewed everything we owned. The prototype, 4 notebooks, my truck, 2 repair toolkits. Evelyn's wedding ring. She removed it and placed it on the table. No, it is worth at least $40,000. It belonged to Victor, that is not why. Then why? Because selling a diamond that size creates records, questions, delays. We need money. We need clean money. She looked at me carefully. You thought I was being sentimental. I did. I am not. She pushed the ring aside. It is evidence of what? Victor bought it through Hale Industrial's executive gift account. I stared at her. He charged your engagement ring to the company? He charged nearly everything to the company. That is tax fraud. It is accounting aggression. That is rich person language for tax fraud. For now, it is leverage. We needed something faster. At 1 in the morning, I remembered a machine. 3 months earlier, I had repaired an industrial oven at Russo Artisan Foods, a family-owned frozen meal factory in Brooklyn. The oven wasted so much heat that workers kept the loading bay open in winter. The owner, Lena Russo, complained that utility costs would kill the business before labor did. She still owed me $12,000. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Noah, I know about the invoice. I'm not calling about the invoice. That makes me feel worse. I can cut your energy bill. You said that last time. I said replacing the oven controls could cut it by 6%, and I still could not afford it. This is different. Everything expensive is different. I will install a prototype for free. Silence. What is wrong with it? Nothing. Then why free? Because I need operating data. What happens if it explodes? It won't. That was not my question. I told her everything except Victor's involvement, the prototype, the laundromat, the stolen data, the insurance problem, the pilot deadline. When I finished, Lena said nothing for so long that I checked the screen to make sure the call was still connected. Then she asked, Did you really sell your watch for parts? I looked at Evelyn. How do you know that? You told my maintenance supervisor. I had. While searching for a gasket supplier, I had called 3 former customers. One was Lena's plant. Information traveled through working people faster than it traveled through boardrooms. Yes, I said. My father sold his wedding ring when we bought our first freezer, Lena said. My mother never forgave him. That sounds promising. She kept the freezer. More promising. Come at 6. We reached Russo Artisan Foods before dawn. The factory occupied an old brick building beneath an elevated train line. Inside, workers prepared trays of lasagna, baked ziti, chicken marsala, and stuffed shells for grocery stores across the region. Heat rolled from the industrial ovens in heavy waves. Lena met us in a hairnet and white coat. She was short, broad-shouldered, and moved like the building belonged to her because it did. You are Evelyn Cross, she said. Evelyn paused. Yes. I saw you at an energy conference 3 years ago. You attended? I own ovens. Energy conferences are horror films for people who own ovens. She led us to the main production line. The largest oven stretched nearly 40 feet. Its exhaust system released heat at more than 400 degrees. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. This is ideal. That is what the last consultant said before charging me $30,000. We have $8, I said. You are safe. Lena almost smiled. We spent 3 hours mapping the exhaust system. The laundromat prototype could not handle the oven's temperature directly. We needed a secondary exchange chamber, different seals, and a reinforced valve assembly. We also needed parts. Lena listened to the list. I have a maintenance storeroom, she said. Inside were shelves of valves, pumps, electrical panels, steel pipe, insulation, and retired equipment. Some parts were new. Most were salvaged from upgrades. To me, it looked like money. To Evelyn, it looked like possibility. We worked for 36 hours. Lena gave us access to 2 maintenance technicians, Carlos Vega and Priya Shah. Carlos had spent 20 years repairing food processing lines. Priya could rebuild control panels faster than I could label wires. They did not ask whether we were funded. They asked what needed to be done. That difference saved us. Evelyn redesigned the heat interface on a whiteboard beside the oven. I fabricated the enclosure with Carlos. Priya built a separate electrical cabinet with proper breakers, emergency isolation, and temperature alarms. For the first time, the prototype looked less like a stolen appliance and more like industrial equipment. At midnight, Lena brought trays of baked ziti from the test kitchen. We ate standing up. Priya pointed at Evelyn with a plastic fork. You designed Hale's recovery system at the Newark plant. Evelyn stopped chewing. How do you know? I worked there during the retrofit. They said Victor Hale designed it, Carlos said. Priya laughed. Victor Hale once asked me whether voltage came in gallons. Even Evelyn smiled. Priya continued. You were the one walking the floor at 3 in the morning. You remembered every technician's name. I needed accurate feedback. You listened, Priya said. Executives do not listen. Carlos leaned against the workbench. Why did Hale let you leave? He did not let me leave, Evelyn said. He threw me out. Priya's expression changed. Then he is dumber than he looks. That was the moment our company gained its first loyal insiders. We did not hire them. We could not pay them. But by dawn, Carlos and Priya had begun saying we instead of you. At 9 in the morning, we started the oven. Heat surged through the new exchange chamber. The converter vibrated. The green light appeared. Output climbed faster than it had at the laundromat. 5,000 watts, 12,000, 24,000, 37,000. The adaptive loop began adjusting. Evelyn watched the recovery curve. 11%, she said. Lena frowned. That is less than the dryer. The oven is larger. The raw energy recovered is much higher. The output climbed again, 15%. 17. Then an alarm screamed. Priya hit the emergency isolation. Steam burst from a relief valve. Everyone stepped back. The system shut down, Carlos swore. Lena stared at the prototype. That looked expensive. The pressure spike came from the secondary chamber. Can it be fixed? Lena asked. Yes. How long? Evelyn examined the data. 6 hours. You have 3. Why? Lena looked toward the loading bay. Because Rion Energy's regional director is arriving at noon. My stomach tightened. You invited them? They requested an emergency meeting last night. Last night? After someone told them you were here. The trap was closing faster than I expected. At 11:58, a black Mercedes stopped outside the factory. 3 people entered. The first was a Rion engineer carrying a tablet. The second was Marcus Vane. The third was Victor Hale. He walked onto the production floor wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than every tool in my truck. His gaze moved across the new enclosure, the control cabinet, the temporary piping, and finally Evelyn. He smiled, not with surprise. With satisfaction. There you are. Evelyn straightened. Victor looked at me. You should have taken Daniel's offer. Lena stepped between us. This is my facility. Victor barely acknowledged her. Then you should know you are hosting stolen Hale industrial technology. Evelyn's voice went cold. Nothing here belongs to Hale. Marcus opened a leather folder. We have filed for an emergency injunction against Evelyn Cross, Noah Reid, Cross Meridian Labs, and any party assisting in the use or transfer of proprietary thermal recovery systems. Lena's face hardened. You filed against my company? If you continue the test. Victor walked closer to the converter. You really believed you could build an empire from my garbage? Evelyn said nothing. He touched the steel enclosure with 2 fingers. This is crude, I said. Victor turned to me. So did your first company. Until it didn't. I looked at Marcus's folder. You filed this morning? Yes. Based on what evidence? Marcus's smile was thin. Internal records showing Evelyn developed substantially similar systems while employed by Hale Industrial. Substantially similar is not identical. That is for a court to decide. Victor faced Evelyn again. Come home. The words shocked everyone. Even Marcus glanced at him. Victor continued softly. Return the notebooks. The transfer. I will withdraw the claim against your friend. I will restore your accounts and provide a residence. Evelyn stared at him. And Celeste? Victor's expression did not change. Celeste understands business. There it was. He did not want Evelyn back. He wanted ownership. Lena folded her arms. I would like all of you out. Victor ignored her. This ends today, Evelyn. She looked at the disabled prototype. Then at the injunction. Then at me. For the first time since the ballroom, I saw doubt in her eyes. Not fear for herself. Fear that she had dragged everyone else into Victor's war. I stepped beside her. What exactly does the injunction prohibit? I asked. Marcus opened the document. Testing, manufacturing, sale, disclosure, demonstration, or transfer of the disputed system. Does it prohibit us from turning on Lena's oven? Marcus frowned. No. Does it prohibit us from measuring heat? No. Does it prohibit her maintenance staff from operating equipment they already own? Do not be clever. I'm not clever. I'm a bankrupt waiter. Victor's jaw tightened. Start the oven. Marcus stepped forward. I warned you. We are not starting the converter. Priya powered the production line. The oven burners ignited. Heat began building. I turned to Lena. Do you still have the old steam generator in storage? Yes. The one you plan to scrap? Yes. Do you own it free and clear? Yes. Carlos, bring it. Victor watched us with growing irritation. The injunction covered Evelyn's disputed recovery system. It did not cover an abandoned steam generator, a retired alternator, and ordinary plant equipment owned by Russo Artisan Foods. For 3 hours, we worked under their eyes. We disconnected the adaptive control unit completely. We removed the disputed chamber. We routed waste heat through a crude secondary loop into the old steam generator, then connected it to the retired alternator. It was inefficient, ugly, and legally separate. At 3:27, Priya closed the breaker. The alternator spun. Lights came on across the maintenance bay. The output meter stabilized at 9,000 watts. Not 37,000, not revolutionary. But real. Lena looked at Marcus. Is steam proprietary now? Marcus said nothing. Victor's face had gone pale, because he finally understood what made Evelyn dangerous. It was not one machine. It was not 4 notebooks. It was not a stolen data cable. It was her mind. You could seize a prototype. You could freeze an account. You could file an injunction. You could not stop her from solving the same problem again with different pieces. Evelyn stepped toward Victor. You threw away the wrong asset. The line landed quietly. Victor looked at her as though she had struck him. Then his phone rang. He checked the screen. His expression changed. Marcus's phone rang next, then the Rion director's. All 3 answered almost simultaneously. I watched their faces. Something had happened. Victor moved away from us, speaking in a low, furious voice. Marcus covered his phone. Which account? The Rion director turned toward the wall. No, do not announce anything until I get back. Lena looked at me. What did you do? I had done nothing. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Bell Hospitality Lenin. The subject contained 4 words, pilot contract fully executed. Mr. Bell had signed not for 3 dryers, for 10. Attached was a second message. Rion Energy terminated negotiations this morning after attempting to raise our quoted price by 30%. We are proceeding with Cross Meridian. Victor ended his call. He looked at me. How did Bell sign with you? You have no certification. We have a contract contingent on certification. You have no insurance. We are working on it. You have no capital. Then why are you worried? His eyes hardened. You think one laundry contract makes you rich? No. I looked at Evelyn. She does. For the first time, Victor lost control completely. He seized the edge of the steel enclosure and pulled it toward him. This belongs to Hale. The unit shifted. A folded paper slid from beneath the mounting plate and landed at his feet. Evelyn froze. I recognized the paper. It was one of the provisional patent filing receipts. Victor bent down. I moved first. So did Marcus. Marcus reached it before either of us. He unfolded the page. His eyes moved across the text. Then he looked at Evelyn. This filing date is 8 years old. Victor snatched the paper from him. What? Evelyn said nothing. Marcus read over Victor's shoulder. Cross Meridian Labs filed provisional protection on foundational thermal recovery architecture before Evelyn joined Hale Industrial. The factory became silent except for the oven fans. Victor's face drained slowly. The oldest design, the legal foundation, the ownership chain. All of it predated him. Marcus looked at Evelyn with something close to fear. The employment agreement cannot reach backward. No, she said. Victor crushed the paper in his fist. This proves nothing. It proves enough to dissolve your emergency claim, Marcus said quietly. Victor turned on him. You work for me. I work for Hale Industrial. There is a difference. That sentence opened a crack between them, small, but visible. Victor stared at Marcus, then at the machine, then at Evelyn. He had arrived expecting surrender. He was leaving with doubt inside his own legal team. He pointed at me. This is not over. I nodded. I know. He walked toward the exit. At the loading bay, he stopped and looked back at Evelyn. You will regret choosing him, she answered without hesitation. I regret choosing you. Victor left. Marcus followed more slowly. Before stepping outside, he glanced once at the patent receipt still crushed in Victor's hand. He had seen something Victor had not, a weakness. The Rion director hurried after them. The Mercedes disappeared beneath the elevated tracks. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Lena turned to us. Was that patent receipt supposed to be under the machine? No, Evelyn said. I looked at her. Where was the original? That was a copy? Yes. Why was it there? Priya raised one hand. I put it under the mounting plate. We all turned toward her. She looked embarrassed. The table was uneven. Carlos began laughing. Lena joined him. Then I did. Even Evelyn laughed, though she covered her face with both hands. A folded patent receipt used as a shim had just cracked Victor's injunction. For once, luck had entered through our door. But it did not stay long. Dana Brooks called before sunset. News travels fast. Industrial insurers monitor litigation. Can you cover us now? No. My hope dropped. But I found someone willing to meet you. Who? A certification firm called Ashford Technical. That was one of the names you gave us. They reviewed Hale Industrial's claim. And? They think the claim makes you dangerous. That does not sound helpful. To certain investors, dangerous is another word for valuable. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning at Ashford's laboratory in Hoboken. We arrived with the prototype, the notebooks, the Bell contract, and every document we owned. Ashford Technical occupied a converted shipyard building, filled with testing chambers, pressure rigs, and equipment that looked capable of launching satellites. The founder, Samuel Ashford, met us personally. He was 72, thin, and walked with a black cane. He did not offer coffee. He did not ask about Victor. He pointed at the prototype. Turn it on. We need a heat source, Evelyn said. Samuel tapped his cane against the floor. A technician opened a test chamber. Inside sat an industrial burner connected to a calibrated exhaust system. We have heat. For 6 hours, Ashford's team tested the converter. They pushed it beyond the laundromat conditions, beyond the Russo oven conditions. They raised pressure, lowered temperature, interrupted flow, simulated power failures, and forced emergency shutdowns. The prototype failed twice. The first time, a valve locked open. The second time, the control board overheated. Each failure made my chest tighten. Each failure made Evelyn more focused. She modified the software, replaced one sensor, and adjusted the bypass sequence. On the third run, the unit survived everything. Samuel watched the final output curve. 33.2% recovery, he said. In this load profile, Evelyn replied. Adaptive? Yes. Patent position? Foundational filing predates Hale employment. Full utility application is not yet submitted. Why? No capital. Samuel looked at me. Revenue? Bell Hospitality signed a 10-unit contingent pilot this morning. Contract value? Equipment recovery plus performance fees. Projected first-year revenue between $90,000 and $140,000. Other customers? Russo Artisan Foods is testing. Signed? Lena had sent us a letter of intent before we left. I placed it on the table. Samuel read it. Then he looked at Evelyn. Why did Hale Industrial let you leave? They did not understand what they owned. That is not an answer. She held his gaze. They believed they owned me. Samuel nodded once. He understood that answer. What do you need? He asked. Certification, I said. Insurance eligibility. Patent counsel. Manufacturing capital. How much capital? $1 million. Evelyn looked at me sharply. We had discussed 500,000. But 500,000 solved only the pilot. 1 million gave us room to survive sabotage. Samuel tapped his cane. For what percentage? 10, he laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was impressed. You have no certified product, one contingent contract, and an active ownership dispute. We also have a machine your technicians just tried to kill for 6 hours. But it didn't. He looked at the output screen again. 12%. No, I said. 10-15 with anti-dilution rights. 10 without. Board seat. Observer seat. First refusal on future funding. No. Priority participation. Yes. Founder vesting. No. Key person insurance. On both of us. Samuel's eyes narrowed with amusement. You negotiated before. I failed before. Better education. He held out his hand. 12%. $1 million. Ashford completes certification at cost and introduces patent counsel. 1 board observer. No operational control. I looked at Evelyn. Equal dilution, she said. Equal, I agreed. We shook Samuel's hand. By the time we left the building, Cross Meridian Labs had $1 million in committed funding. The transfer required documentation and would take 3 business days. But the signed term sheet existed. For the first time in my life, a piece of paper made me worth something. My phone rang as we reached the parking lot. Daniel Mercer, I answered. You should have taken my offer, he said. I took a better one. Ashford? How do you know? Because Samuel Ashford called North Quay during diligence. My stomach tightened. Daniel laughed softly. You think you just won, didn't I? You sold 12% of a company Hale Industrial will own by court order. The injunction is collapsing. The injunction was never the point. What was? To make you reveal every document, filing, partner, customer, and weakness you have. A black sedan turned into the parking lot. Not Victor's Mercedes. This one carried government plates. 2 men stepped out. Behind them came Marcus Vane. Daniel continued through the phone. Discovery is useful, Noah. Marcus approached, holding a sealed envelope. One of the officials displayed identification from the Federal Trade Office. The other carried evidence bags. Daniel's voice became almost gentle. Especially when the government does it for you. Marcus stopped in front of us. Evelyn Cross, Noah Reid, you are being served with a federal preservation order concerning suspected export-controlled technology and unlawful removal of proprietary industrial data. Evelyn's face went white. The officials moved toward the truck. One opened the rear door and looked at the prototype. Do not touch that, I said. He held up the order. We are seizing it pending review. 3 business days before the money arrived. 1 week before Bell's deadline. And Victor had just taken our only working machine without filing another civil claim. My phone was still against my ear. Daniel whispered one final sentence. This is what being poor looks like when rich men decide to notice you. The officials lifted the prototype out of my truck. Evelyn watched them seal it inside a black evidence container. Then Marcus stepped closer and spoke so only we could hear. Victor wants the notebooks next. He turned away. But before he reached the sentence, I saw his left hand move behind his back. 2 fingers opened, then closed. A signal when the cars disappeared. I looked down. Marcus had dropped a small brass key beside my shoe. Stamped into its head was a number, 317. Evelyn saw it. Her expression changed. What does that open? I asked. She picked up the key. The sealed archive room beneath Hale Industrial's first factory. What is inside? She closed her fingers around it. Every record Victor believes he destroyed. The key was colder than the morning air. Evelyn held it between her thumb and forefinger, as though it might burn her. Hale's Industrial's first factory closed 12 years ago, I said. The main production floor closed, she replied. The archive levels remained active. Why? Environmental records, patent history, safety investigations. Anything the company was legally required to preserve but wanted nobody to read. And room 317? She looked toward the road where the government sedan had vanished. Victor ordered it sealed after his father died. What did he put inside? Not what he put inside, what his father left behind. Samuel Ashford appeared at the laboratory entrance behind us, leaning on his cane. I assume the government taking your prototype was not part of the demonstration. No, I said. He looked at the brass key. And I assume that is not a hotel key. No. Excellent. I dislike ordinary investments. He led us back inside. Ashford's conference room had no windows and a steel door thick enough to survive an explosion. Samuel locked it, placed his cane against the table, and called his legal counsel on a secure line. Her name was Rebecca Sloan. She arrived in less than an hour wearing a black suit and carrying 2 phones, neither of which she allowed on the table. She read the preservation order twice. This is aggressive, she said. Can they keep the prototype? I asked. Temporarily. How temporarily if the trade office believes the system may include export-controlled technology? They can hold it during technical review. It does not. Can you prove that without the prototype? Evelyn opened one of the notebooks. Yes. Rebecca studied her. Evelyn frowned. Why? Because the order requires preservation. It does not require voluntary education. The government has your machine, not your mind. Let them explain what they think is controlled. Samuel sat at the head of the table. Who initiated the complaint? The filing is confidential, Rebecca said, but the language is unusually specific. It references adaptive industrial energy recovery with potential strategic manufacturing applications. That came from Victor, Evelyn said. Rebecca placed the order down. Whoever filed it knows just enough to sound credible and not enough to be accurate. Daniel admitted the goal was discovery, I said. Did you record him? Yes, I played the call. Rebecca listened without moving. When Daniel mentioned federal discovery, her eyes sharpened. That is useful. He admitted nothing illegal. He predicted a government action before service. He may have been told. That is the point. She replayed the final portion. This is not enough to accuse Hale Industrial of abusing a federal process. It is enough to make the agency uncomfortable about its source. How do we get the machine back? We challenge scope, demand the technical basis, and establish an independent expert review. Samuel tapped one finger on the table. Ashford can perform the review. You are an investor, Rebecca said. They will call you biased. I know people who are not. People Victor cannot buy? Samuel smiled. People Victor cannot afford. Rebecca turned to Evelyn. Now tell me about the key. Evelyn explained room 317. Rebecca's expression did not change. You are proposing entry into property owned by Hale Industrial. With a key given to us by Hale Industrial's chief legal officer, I said. Did he say you had say anything? No. Then he gave you an object, not authorization. Samuel looked at me. She means breaking in would be illegal. I understood. Good. Your face suggested otherwise. Rebecca slid the key across the table. If Marcus Vane wants you to see something, make him create a lawful path. He cannot. Evelyn's the board. Marcus controls legal preservation, not access. Then access is not the first move. Rebecca opened a legal pad. The first move is to force Hale Industrial to preserve room 317. I stared at her. Without revealing we know what is inside, we do not need to identify the room. She began writing. We file a notice connected to the ownership dispute demanding preservation of all historical research records, internal attribution files, executive communications, and archived patent materials relating to thermal recovery. Evelyn understood first. If Victor destroys the archive after receiving notice, he creates spoliation. And if he does not, he preserves the evidence for us. Samuel nodded. A trap that works whether he moves or remains still. Rebecca looked at me. Those are the only reliable traps. By noon, she had drafted the notice. By 1, it had been served electronically to Hale Industrial's board, outside counsel, internal legal department, auditors, and insurance carriers. Marcus received it. Victor received it. Every person who might later claim ignorance received it. Then Rebecca filed an emergency motion challenging the federal seizure. Our company had existed for less than a week. It was already fighting on 3 fronts. The prototype was gone. The Bell deadline was approaching. The Ashford funds were delayed pending regulatory review. And our only remaining physical proof was a crude steam assembly inside Lena Russo's factory that generated 9,000 watts and looked as though it had been built by desperate shipyard workers during a war, which was close enough. We build another unit, Evelyn said. Samuel looked at her. With what money? Your laboratory has the equipment. You do not yet own my laboratory. I only need to borrow it. That is what people say before damaging expensive machines. I will sign responsibility. With what assets? She glanced at me. He owns a truck. Samuel laughed. It was the first time I saw him make a decision based on admiration instead of calculation. You have 48 hours, he said. You may use fabrication bay too. Ashford technicians observe everything. Evelyn stood. We need Carlos and Priya. Call them. We need the bell dryer specifications. Get them. We need the cycle data that was stolen. You said it was gone. It is gone from the prototype. She opened the oldest black notebook. But the adaptive logic began here. For the next 2 days, we did not leave the laboratory. Carlos and Priya arrived from Russo Artisan Foods carrying tools, spare components, and enough food to survive a siege. Lena sent them with one condition. If you become rich, you pay my invoice first, I promised. Priya looked around Ashford's fabrication bay and whistled. This place has a 5-axis mill. Carlos pointed at a laser cutter. This place has everything. Samuel stood behind us. This place had everything before you arrived. I would like that to remain true. We started from nothing. Not exactly nothing. We had Evelyn's original architecture, my installation knowledge, Carlos's experience with industrial equipment, Priya's control systems, and Ashford's testing resources. The first prototype had evolved over years. The second had to be born in 48 hours. Evelyn changed the design immediately. The seized unit had too many custom parts, she said. That makes manufacturing slow and gives suppliers leverage. She replaced the handmade chamber with a modular stack built from standardized steel plates. She separated the adaptive control board from the thermal housing. She moved pressure regulation into an external cartridge that could be replaced without shutting down the full system. Every change made the unit simpler. Every simplification made it harder to stop. At 8 the first night, Samuel entered the bay. He watched Carlos weld the enclosure while Priya assembled the new control cabinet. "What is different?" he asked. "Everything the government took," Evelyn said. "That is not an answer. The first system adapted itself as one machine. This one separates learning from conversion. The control module can manage multiple recovery units. How many? Potentially hundreds." Samuel looked at me. "You understand what that means?" "One brain for an entire factory." "More than that." He walked toward the whiteboard where Evelyn had drawn a network of production lines. "A customer could begin with one unit. The control platform would learn the facility. Every additional unit would improve the whole network." Evelyn nodded. "The data becomes more valuable than the hardware." Samuel's expression grew serious. "Hale Industrial will understand that. Eventually," I said. "They may already." My phone rang. "Mr. Bell." "You have 4 days left," he said. "We know. I heard the government seized your machine. We are building another." "That is not reassuring." "It should be." "Why?" "Because they took our only prototype yesterday, and we will have a better one tomorrow." He was silent. Then he said, "Rion returned." "What did they offer? 20% below their original price. They are afraid. They say they are competitive." "They were not competitive before we appeared." "I know." "Did you sign?" "No." "Why?" "Because they added a clause requiring exclusive access to my operating data." There it was. Rion did not only want the contract. They wanted to see what Cross Meridian's system had found. "Do not sign anything," I said. "You have 4 days. We Raiden's offer." "That is fair." "No, it is business." He ended the call. At midnight, Rebecca contacted us. The Federal Trade Office had agreed to a preliminary conference but refused to return the prototype. They say an unnamed industry source identified similarities to controlled turbine efficiency technology, she said. Evelyn stared at the speaker. "Our system is not turbine technology." "I know. Anyone qualified would know. That helps us." "How?" "Because the agency's source either lied or misunderstood the technology so badly that the complaint becomes unreliable." "Can we learn who filed it?" "Not yet." Samuel looked across the workbench. "Request the source's technical qualifications." "I already did." Rebecca paused. "They refused." Samuel smiled. "Then they are protecting someone embarrassing." At 3 in the morning, the new unit failed its first pressure test. A weld split along the modular chamber. Steam filled the test bay. The emergency system shut down properly, but the housing warped. Carlos stared at it. "That steel is too thin." "We selected it for weight," Evelyn said. "We selected wrong." She did not argue. "Thicker plate." "We lose 4 hours. We lose more if it fails in Bell's plant." Carlos nodded. That was how the team worked. No ego. No titles. Only the problem. By sunrise, the replacement chamber was ready. The second pressure test held. The thermal test did not. Output remained below 15% recovery. Evelyn recalibrated the valve timing. It rose to 18. Priya changed the sampling interval. 21. I altered the exhaust interface to reduce turbulence. 24. The numbers climbed through 1,000 small decisions. By noon, the system reached 29% recovery on a simulated commercial dryer profile. Then the control module crashed. The screen went black. Priya swore and opened the cabinet. The processor overheated. "We need active cooling," I said. "No," Evelyn replied. "We need lower computational load. The adaptive model is too heavy," Priya said. Then we split it. "Across what?" Evelyn turned toward the bank of old test computers along the wall. "External training." Samuel understood. "You let the unit run a simpler operating model and update it from a separate server. That gives us remote optimization," Evelyn said. "And recurring service revenue," I added. Samuel tapped his cane once. "Now you are building a company." We rebuilt the software architecture during the final night. Priya created the lightweight operating layer. Evelyn reconstructed the adaptive model from her handwritten equations and memory. I designed the installation sequence for Bell's dryers. Carlos fabricated 3 interchangeable exhaust collars to fit Bell's most common machine models. At dawn, the second prototype entered full-load testing. It held. 31% recovery. No pressure spike, no overheating, no valve lock. We ran it for 6 hours. It held. Samuel's technicians inspected every component and signed an internal test report. Not full certification. Enough for a supervised field trial. We loaded the unit into my truck. Before we left, Samuel handed me a document. Ashford Bridge Authorization. "What is it?" $200,000 available immediately against the investment commitment. I stared at him. "The regulatory review applies to the full transfer. This is structured as secured equipment financing." "What is the security?" "The company's hardware." "Then do not lose it." I signed. Cross Meridian finally had cash. Not projected cash. Not promised money. Money we paid Dana's preliminary insurance deposit. We ordered steel for 10 units. We paid the certification retainer. I transferred $12,000 to Russo Artisan Foods for my old repair invoice. Then I added another $12,000 as a pilot advance. You overpaid. Immediate. No, you owed 12. We owe access, labor, materials, and trust. You sound rich already. We are deeply in debt. Then you sound like a real company. Before leaving for Bell's plant, I made one more stop. The salvage yard owner recognized me. He leaned behind the counter. No refunds. I am not here for a refund. I placed $500 in cash on the counter. The camera recording. His eyes moved to the money. Yesterday's price, today's payment. He took the cash and led me into a back office. The surveillance system was old, but the image was clear enough. We found the day I sold the watch. Then the following afternoon, a man in a dark suit entered the yard, spoke to the owner, and purchased the watch. He kept his face turned away from the main camera. But when he left, he opened the rear door of a black sedan. For 1 second, the side of the vehicle filled the frame. A silver emblem was visible near the front panel. North Quay Capital, Daniels Investment Group. The man entered the car. The driver turned. It was the Rion regional director, who had accompanied Victor to Russo Artisan Foods. I copied the footage. Then I looked at the shelf behind the counter. My uncle's watch was not there. Who has it now? The suit. What was his name? He did not say. How did he know the watch belonged to me? The owner shrugged. He showed me your photograph. That answer told me the purchase had never been about the watch. It was surveillance. Intimidation. Proof they knew every sacrifice we made. I left with the recording. Not the watch. That loss still belonged to me. Bell Hospitality Linen occupied a warehouse complex near Elizabeth, New Jersey. Steam rose from rooftop vents. Trucks lined the loading bays. Inside, industrial washers and dryers ran in rows so long the far wall blurred through heat. Mr. Bell met us near the main electrical room. You brought 1 unit. 1 certified test unit, I said. You promised 3 dryers. 3 recovery interfaces. He looked at the enclosure. It looks expensive. It is. Good. Rion's contract lay on his desk. Unsigned, we had 1 day to make sure it stayed that way. Carlos and Priya began installation. Bell's maintenance crew watched. Evelyn mapped the dryer's load patterns. I coordinated shutdown windows so production could continue around us. By evening, the unit was connected to the first 3 machines. We started with 1. The system stabilized at 27% recovery. Then the second dryer came online. The control module adjusted. Combined recovery reached 29. When the third started, efficiency dropped sharply. 19%. Evelyn frowned. Exhaust overlap. The 3 dryers shared a common roof stack. Pressure changes in one line affected the others. Rion's system would have required separate units, each running independently. Ours was supposed to learn the interaction. It did not. Not quickly enough. We ran another cycle, 21%, another. 22, Mr. Bell checked his watch. Rion's offer expires at noon tomorrow. We know. At this rate, their guaranteed savings are higher. They are guaranteeing a fixed estimate, I said. They are guaranteeing something. Evelyn studied the pressure maps. The shared stack created pulses every time a dryer changed phase. Our model treated those pulses as noise. They're not noise, she said. What are they? Priya asked. Communication. She pointed at the graph. Each dryer's exhaust pattern tells us where it is in the cycle. We can predict the pressure changes before they reach the chamber. Priya understood. Across all 3 units. That requires faster sampling. The external server can handle it. We do not have a dedicated connection. Mr. Bell folded his arms. My plant network is restricted. We need access, I said. No. Then we install our own line. By noon, yes. From where? I looked toward the roof. The nearest reliable commercial connection entered a distribution warehouse across the highway. We could not wait for a telecom company. We needed a private wireless bridge. At 9 that night, I called every network contractor I knew. None could arrive in time. Priya called former colleagues. Carlos called his nephew. Samuel called 3 technology firms. Everyone had equipment. No one had availability. At 10:15, an unfamiliar number called me. Mr. Reid? Yes, this is Marcus Vane. I moved away from the team. Why are you calling? Because Victor received your preservation notice. What did he do? He ordered the first factory archive reviewed for destruction eligibility. My grip tightened. That violates the notice. He claims routine 317. Not over the phone. Then why give us the key? I did not give you anything. Marcus. A pause, then his voice dropped. Victor's father commissioned an independent valuation of Evelyn's work before he died. Evelyn's work. Years before Victor threw her out. Why? He suspected Victor was misrepresenting research attribution to the board. What did the valuation conclude? I have not read the full report. Then how do you know? I drafted the retention instructions. Who has access? Victor. Me. The chair of the audit committee. Can the audit chair enter the room? Not without a reason. We served a preservation notice. That is a reason. Then contact the chair. I cannot appear to coordinate with you. You already are. No, he said. I am protecting Hale Industrial from its chief executive. That distinction mattered to him. It might matter in court. Why now? I asked. Because Victor instructed me to produce a legal opinion stating Evelyn's foundational patent filing was invalid. Is it? No. Did you tell him? Yes. What happened? He told me to find a different answer. There it was. The crack had widened. Marcus continued. The audit committee chair is Margaret Hale, Victor's aunt. She dislikes scandal more than she likes Victor. How do we reach her? You do not. Then who does? The Federal Trade Office. I understood. If the government's technical review requires historical ownership records, the archive becomes relevant to its own investigation and protected from destruction. Yes. Can Rebecca request it? She must know the exact room. I looked at the brass key in my pocket. 317. Marcus ended the call. I immediately contacted Rebecca. She filed an emergency supplemental request before midnight, asking the trade office to preserve and review all materials in Hale Industrial Archive, room 317 relating to thermal systems, research attribution, export classification, and ownership. The agency acknowledged receipt at 12:42. Victor could no longer destroy the archive without risking obstruction of a federal review he had initiated himself. His weapon had turned in his hand, but it did not solve the bell problem. At 1 in the morning, Carlos's nephew arrived carrying 2 wireless bridge units and a coil of outdoor cable. He was 22, exhausted, and wearing a sweatshirt from a community college technology program. My name is Luis, he said. Uncle Carlos said someone was trying to steal your company. Several people, I replied. Good. I brought the expensive antennas. We mounted one unit on Bell's roof. The second needed a connection point across the highway. The warehouse owner refused. Mr. Bell called him. They argued for 10 minutes. Then Bell offered free linen service for 1 year. The owner agreed. At 3:30, Luis established the bridge. Priya connected the control module to Ashford's remote server. Evelyn uploaded the synchronized valve model. We restarted the 3 dryers. The first cycle reached 24%. The second reached 28%. The third reached 32%. By dawn, the network stabilized at 34.6% recovery. Higher than the single unit. Higher than the first prototype. Higher than anything Evelyn had projected. Mr. Bell arrived at 6. We showed him the live data. Verified? He asked. We need your utility meter. He called his energy consultant. The consultant arrived at 8 with calibrated monitoring equipment. For 3 hours, he measured gas input, electrical output, dryer performance, cycle times, and production volume. At 11:30, he completed the calculation. 33.9% net energy reduction across the 3 connected dryers. Mr. Bell looked at the Rion contract on his desk. Then at me. What happens with 10? The network improves, Evelyn said. And with 80, we do not know yet. That is not the answer a salesman gives. I am not a salesman. He looked at me. What answer do you give? I considered promising 40%. I considered making the number larger, cleaner, easier to sign. Instead, I told him the truth. We guaranteed 25% after commissioning. If we do better, you save more and we earn more. And if you do worse, we remove the equipment at our expense. Mr. Bell picked up the Rion contract. For 1 second, I thought he would sign it. Then he tore it in half. Install the other 7. The first blood was not dramatic. No cameras, no ballroom. Just paper tearing in a hot office above 80 industrial dryers. But I heard Victor's empire crack inside that sound, Mr. Bell signed the full pilot authorization. The contract gave us access to the plant, operating data, and extend rights if the 10-unit system met its guarantee. Projected first-year revenue rose to $160,000. Projected 5-year value exceeded $500,000. 1 customer, 1 plant, 1 contract. And before the ink dried, Bell's energy consultant asked whether we could visit a paper mill in Pennsylvania. By evening, 2 hotel laundry operators had called. The next morning, Lena introduced us to a frozen bakery chain with 6 ovens. Cross Meridian had gone from begging for 1 test site to choosing which pilot came next. That was when Victor made his first public move. Hale Industrial issued a press release announcing Project Phoenix, an advanced adaptive energy recovery platform for industrial manufacturing. The language mirrored ours. The promised efficiency mirrored ours. The planned launch date was 6 weeks away. Victor appeared on financial television beside Celeste Arden and called it the result of years of Hale innovation. Behind him, a concept rendering showed a black modular converter connected to multiple factory lines. Our architecture, not copied perfectly, copied enough. Evelyn watched the interview from Bell's control room. Victor smiled into the camera. Hale Industrial has always believed waste is simply value waiting for leadership. I saw Evelyn's hand tighten around the notebook. The cruelest part was not the theft. It was how naturally he wore her ideas. The host asked whether Project Phoenix faced competition from smaller entrants. Victor laughed. There are always amateurs making exaggerated claims around serious industries. Hale has the resources, safety record, and experience to separate science from fantasy. My phone began ringing. Samuel, Rebecca, Dana. Then Mr. Bell's consultant. Investors watched television. Customers watched television. Insurers watched television. Victor had labeled us amateurs before most of the market knew our name. Evelyn turned off the screen. He has the stolen cycle data, I said, and Rion engineers. Can they build something by the launch? Yes. My stomach tightened. How good? Good enough for a demonstration. Good enough to take customers? Yes. Good enough to survive real use? She looked toward the 3 dryers running under our control. No. There was our opening. Victor was rushing. Rushing created shortcuts. Shortcuts created evidence. I called Rebecca. We need to know where Project Phoenix will be demonstrated. I am already looking. Samuel called next. Hale's stock rose 6% after the announcement, he said. They are using our technology to increase company value. They are using the promise of technology. Can we stop them? Not with accusations. Then what? Make them prove it. At 4 that afternoon, Hale Industrial announced a private demonstration for major shareholders, analysts, and strategic customers. The location was Victor's flagship manufacturing plant in Newark. The date was 12 days away. The weakest antagonist had made his move. Rion would build the system. Daniel would hide the financing. Marcus would be forced to defend the claims. Victor would stand in front of the room and take credit. They believed we would rush to court. They believed we would beg for an injunction. They believed we would attack the demonstration before it happened. We did none of those things. Instead, I asked Mr. Bell for one favor. I want to bring 10 potential customers through your plant on the same day as Victor's demonstration. He leaned back. Why? Because while he shows a machine for 1 hour, ours will have real operating history. How much history? By then, more than 1,000 combined machine hours. Mr. Bell considered it. You want analysts, too. Reporters? No. He raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because Victor expects reporters. He does not expect customers to compare contracts. What do I get? Expansion pricing fixed for 3 years. 5, 3, 4 agreed. He held out his hand. The trap began there, not in a courtroom, not in the archive. Inside a laundry plant where 10 machines would run day and night while Victor prepared a performance. The trade office has agreed to inspect room 317. When? The morning before Victor's demonstration. Will we be allowed inside? No. Then how does that help? They invited an independent technical observer. Who? Samuel Ashford. I looked across Bell's plant. Samuel stood beside the new units, discussing sensor placement with Priya. He saw my expression. What? I lowered the phone. You are going into the archive. His eyes sharpened. Am I? The government invited you. He smiled. Then I will need a larger notebook. Across the room, Evelyn watched the live recovery numbers climb. 35.1%, 35.4, 35.8. The system was still learning. Victor had 12 days to build a lie. We had 12 days to build proof. And inside a sealed room beneath his oldest factory, the dead founder of Hale Industrial had left behind something Victor feared enough to bury for years. The key in my pocket was no longer an invitation. It was a countdown. The 12 days became a war fought in invoices, sensor logs, filings, and sleepless rooms. Victor had money. We had evidence. Money moved faster. Evidence lasted longer. The first 3 days favored him. Hale Industrial purchased priority manufacturing slots from 2 component suppliers we had contacted. Rion offered Bell's plant technicians double their salaries to leave before our expansion installation. North Quay Capital began calling Ashford's limited partners, warning them that Cross Meridian faced federal seizure and certain patent invalidation. None of it happened in public. That made it more dangerous. By the 4th morning, the steel plates for our next 7 units had not arrived. I called the supplier. The order was canceled, the manager said. By whom? Your purchasing representative. We do not have a purchasing representative. The authorization came from your company domain. Cross Meridian did not yet have a protected corporate network. We had 2 laptops, a new email domain, and more urgency than security. Someone had forged the cancellation. When can you restore the order? 3 weeks. We need it in 3 days. Then you need another supplier. I called 5. 2 had no inventory. 1 refused after hearing Hale Industrial's name. 1 demanded full payment at 6 times the previous price. The 5th agreed, then withdrew an hour later. Victor was not trying to beat our technology. He was starving it. At Bell's plant, the 3-unit system continued operating. Recovery averaged 35.6%. The numbers were stronger than our guarantee and more stable every day. But one working installation did not become a business if we could not build the remaining 7 units. Mr. Bell entered the control room while Evelyn and I reviewed supplier lists. You told me 10, he said. We are still installing 10. When? That is 8 days, I know. Rian called again. I looked up. What did they offer? Free installation. They are buying your data. They are buying my contract. Same thing. Bell folded his arms. I did not sign with you because I liked you. I signed because your machine saves money. It does. Then build the other 7. We will. If they are not operational by the morning of Hale's demonstration, the expansion clause expires. Evelyn turned toward him. That clause gives us 30 days. I am adding a deadline. You cannot amend a signed contract alone. No. But I can refuse every future site. He was not bluffing. Bell Hospitality Linen owned 4 more plants through related entities. His recommendation could open a dozen hotel contracts. His rejection could close all of them. 8, he said. 10 units operating, he left. Evelyn looked at me. He is using Victor to pressure us. He is using leverage. You sound as though you approve. I hate it. That is not what I asked. I stared at the canceled purchase orders. It is what I would do. That was the difference between Evelyn and me. She saw the machine. I saw the room around it. Neither view was enough alone. I called Lena Russo. I need steel. How much? Enough for 7 modular chambers. What grade? I gave her the specification. She was quiet. I know someone. Who? My cousin owns a commercial kitchen fabrication shop. Can he supply it? He can steal it from his own inventory. I need him to sell it. He will call it selling, a family favor. I am not family. You paid me twice. That made me a customer. In my family, paying twice makes you suspicious. 3 hours later, we were standing inside Russo Commercial Fabrication in Staten Island. Sheets of high-grade steel leaned against concrete walls. Welding sparks flashed behind protective curtains. Lena's cousin, Anthony Russo, looked at our drawings while chewing a wooden toothpick. You need 7 housings in 5 days. 3, I said. He looked at me. I heard 5. We need 3. You need magic. We need overtime. That is more expensive. How expensive? He wrote a number on the back of one drawing. $140,000. My stomach tightened. That is more than double market. We have $200,000 in bridge funds. Then you can afford it. We also need controls, valves, installation, labor, insurance, and certification. Anthony shrugged. Then you cannot afford it. Lena watched us from the doorway. Anthony. He glanced at her. What? Stop being Victor Hale. The toothpick stopped moving. He looked at Evelyn, then at me. What does that mean? It means deciding their weakness gives you the right to own their future. His face hardened. Business is business. Then do business. She stepped closer. Give them a fair emergency price, keep 20% of the order value as credit in Cross Meridian, and get first position on future enclosure manufacturing if they meet quality and delivery. Anthony looked back at the drawings. That sounds like risk. It sounds like upside. He studied Evelyn. How many of these do you think you can sell? Thousands. People always say thousands. I do not. That answer changed something. Anthony removed the toothpick. 90,000 cash, 50,000 in convertible credit, 3 days. You supply 2 technicians. Agreed, I said. Evelyn looked at me. You did not negotiate. He stopped being Victor. Anthony smiled. Do not make me regret it. We did not leave the fabrication shop for 30 hours. Carlos and I worked beside Anthony's crew cutting, bending, and welding modular plates. Priya assembled control cabinets at Ashford. Evelyn moved between both locations, carrying updated measurements and software changes. Every part had to fit. Every unit had to behave like the first. That was where the new design showed its real value. The seized prototype had been difficult to reproduce because Evelyn had built it as one evolving object. The second design was modular. Each chamber used the same plates. Each control cabinet used the same wiring layout. Each pressure cartridge could be tested independently. By the end of the second day, 3 housings were complete. By the end of the third, all 7 were. We delivered them to Ashford after midnight. Samuel stood in fabrication bay 2 while his technicians inspected the welds. "You are late," he said. "By 18 minutes," I replied. "Late is not measured by how much you prefer it to be." Anthony Russo walked in behind us. "Your loading dock supervisor caused 12 of those minutes." Samuel looked at him. "Who are you?" "The man who built the equipment you're about to criticize." Samuel tapped one housing with his cane. "I criticize everything." "Then criticize the invoice too." They liked each other immediately. Neither admitted it. The 7 units passed structural inspection. 2 failed pressure testing. 1 failed electrical isolation. A sensor batch produced unstable readings. Every failure cost time. At dawn, Priya discovered the sensor issue came from counterfeit components. The packaging looked authentic. The serial numbers did not. Who supplied these? I checked the invoice. Morrow Industrial Controls, a distributor recommended by Daniel Mercer during our first failed company. I felt sick. I had chosen them because they offered immediate inventory. Daniel had expected me to remember an old supplier. He knew desperation made people repeat habits. "Can we replace them?" Evelyn asked. "Correct units are back-ordered." "How many good sensors do we have?" "Enough for 4 systems. We need 10. We have 3 already running." 7 more, Evelyn said. 4 complete. Samuel looked at the failed sensors. "Can you calibrate around them?" "Not safely," Priya replied. No one argued. Safety was the line we did not cross. Victor could rush. We could not. The deadline was now 3 days away. Bell wanted 10 working units. We could build 7 housings. Only 4 could operate. That afternoon, Hale Industrial released footage from Project Phoenix testing. A black converter stood inside Victor's flagship plant. Digital graphics showed an estimated 30% energy recovery. Victor walked beside the machine with Celeste, explaining how adaptive controls would transform global manufacturing. The video did not show continuous operation. It did not show verified meters. It did not show the inside of the housing. It looked perfect. Our equipment looked used because it was. Victor's looked like the future because no one had forced it to survive the present. Customers did not always know the difference. Ashford's phone began ringing. 3 prospective pilot customers canceled meetings. One said they preferred an established supplier. Another asked whether Cross Meridian was simply reselling Hale technology. The paper mill postponed its site visit. The frozen bakery chain stopped answering. Victor's lie had started producing real consequences. At 6 that evening, Samuel called us into the conference room. Rebecca Sloan was already there. A document lay on the table. The Federal Trade Office had expanded its preservation order. Not only the seized prototype, all Cross Meridian technical materials, all notebooks, all software, all designs. Evelyn read the first page. "This freezes development," Rebecca said. "It requires preservation and limits transfer. We need to send software to Bell. You may operate existing systems. New deployment could be challenged." "Could be?" The language is broad. "Because Victor asked for it." Rebecca did not answer. Samuel did. "Because someone convinced the agency your system may contain restricted dual-use controls." "That is absurd," Evelyn said. "Yes," Rebecca replied. "But absurd claims still consume time." "Can they take the notebooks?" "If they obtain a seizure order." "How soon?" "They requested voluntary production." "No," Evelyn said immediately. Rebecca looked at her. "I agree." My phone rang. "Bell," I answered. "We have a problem," he said. "What happened?" "One of your units shut down." "Which one?" "Second row dryer 3. "Any damage?" "No. It isolated itself." "Do not restart it. We are coming." Bell's voice remained flat. "Hale's demonstration is in 2 days, we know. I now have 3 units installed and 2 operating. We have 7 more in assembly." "You told me 10. We will deliver, Noah." He had never used my first name like that. Not angry. Final. "If 10 units are not operating by tomorrow night, I terminate expansion and sign with Rion." The call ended. We drove to the plant. The failed unit had shut down because its pressure cartridge detected a false spike. The cartridge was not damaged. The sensor was. Another counterfeit. We had used 2 components from the same batch in the original expansion interface. The system had protected itself. That was good engineering. It was terrible timing. Priya disconnected the sensor and examined it. This one was installed before the Morrow order. "Then the counterfeit batch is not the only problem," I said. Carlos checked the housing. The sensor connector had been opened. Someone had replaced it after installation. Bell's maintenance crew had access. So did Rion Facility Services again. We reviewed security footage. At 2:13 in the morning, a maintenance worker entered the recovery area. His badge belonged to Bell. His face did not. He wore a cap low over his eyes and remained out of camera range whenever possible. But he made one mistake. When he bent beside the unit, A watch slipped below his sleeve. My uncle's watch. The black leather strap. The scratched silver case. The man Daniel had sent to buy it was now using it as a message. He wanted me to know. I watched the footage twice. Then a third time. Evelyn touched my shoulder. Noah. He entered Bell's plant with stolen credentials. Yes, he sabotaged the sensor. Yes, he wore the watch so I would see it. Yes, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From the kind of anger that narrows the world. Daniel had stolen from me once. Then he bought a memory of my uncle and placed it on the wrist of a saboteur. He believed pain made people reckless. He was almost right. I am going to find him, I said, and then I did not answer. Evelyn stepped in front of me. And then what? He could have caused an explosion. The shutdown worked. He entered a live industrial plant. I know. He is going to keep doing this. I know. You do not know what he did to my first company. Her voice softened. Yes, I do. No, you know the numbers. You do not know what it felt like. Then, tell me. I looked at the stop dryer. I trusted him. I trusted both partners. I guaranteed the leases personally. I used the garage building as collateral. When they emptied the account, the bank took everything my uncle had built. I watched his name come off the sign. My throat tightened. I told myself I failed because I was not smart enough. Then Daniel called tonight and used that failure like it belonged to him. Evelyn did not tell me to calm down. She did not tell me revenge was wrong. She said something more useful. Then do not give him another company. The anger remained. But it stopped controlling my hands. I looked at the footage again. The watch. The time. The man's path. Bell's security system records vehicle entries, I said. Mr. Bell gave us access. At 2:76 minutes before the saboteur entered, a white service van passed the rear gate using a temporary contractor code. The code belonged to Rian. The van left at 2:26. Its rear license plate was obscured by mud. The front plate was clear. Rebecca traced the registration within an hour. The van belonged to Morrow Industrial Controls, the counterfeit sensor supplier. We had the chain. Morrow sold us false components. A Morrow vehicle entered Bell's plant under Rian authorization. A man wearing my uncle's stolen watch sabotaged the unit. North Quay Capital had purchased the watch. Daniel connected North Quay to Victor. It was not yet proof of Victor's direct order. It was enough to destroy the weakest link, Morrow Industrial Controls. Rebecca contacted federal investigators before sunrise. Not the trade office, the industrial fraud unit. Counterfeit safety components inside energy systems created criminal exposure. Sabotage inside an operating plant made it worse. Bell's lawyers contacted local police. Dana notified the insurer. Samuel called 3 manufacturing associations. By 8 in the morning, Morrow's warehouse was under inspection. By 9, inspectors found hundreds of counterfeit sensors with falsified certification labels. By 10, Morrow's owner attempted to leave the state. By noon, he was in custody. His name was Warren Pike. He was not a mastermind. He was a frightened man with debt, bad inventory, and a habit of saying yes to richer people. Rebecca attended his first interview. She called us afterward. He admitted selling counterfeit sensors knowingly. Did he admit entering Bell's plant? I asked. No. Did he identify the man? He says Daniel Mercer arranged a contract to replace defective components before anyone discovered them. Replace them? That is his version. He sabotaged the unit. I know. Does Warren name Rian? He says the access code came through a Rian facilities manager. Victor? No. The latter remained clean. Warren at the bottom. Daniel above him. Rian above Daniel. Victor above all of them. The first antagonist was falling. Not publicly yet, but completely. Rebecca continued. Warren also surrendered emails showing North Quay Capital paid him through a consulting agreement. How much? $250,000. For counterfeit sensors, for expedited component sourcing, and market intelligence. Market intelligence means spying. In court, it means whatever the emails prove. Do they mention Cross Meridian? Yes. The room went silent. Rebecca read one line. Ensure Reid repeats prior sourcing patterns. Failure pressure should make him predictable. Daniel had designed the counterfeit supplier trap specifically for me. He had studied my failure, then recreated it. Evelyn's face went cold. Can we use the emails? Not publicly yet. Why? Because the investigation is active. That always protects the people with money, I said. It protects the chain above Warren. If we expose the evidence now, Daniel destroys records. Samuel leaned on his cane. So we let him believe Morrow fell alone. Yes. And the sabotage footage? Bell may preserve it, but do not release it. I hated the answer. It was correct. That made me hate it more. We still needed sensors. The industrial fraud unit had seized Morrow's warehouse, including a locked cabinet containing authentic components purchased before the counterfeit batch. Rebecca negotiated their release as evidence-tested inventory. By late afternoon, we had 12 genuine sensors, enough. The 7 new units returned to assembly. Pressure testing resumed. Control cabinets came online. Bell's deadline was less than 30 hours away. Then the genuine setback arrived. Not sabotage. Not Victor, engineering. The 5th new unit failed under synchronized load. Then the 6th. Then the 7th. All 3 showed unstable valve timing when connected to the shared network. The first 4 worked. The last 3 oscillated. Their pressure cycles reinforced one another until the system entered emergency shutdown. Evelyn stared at the live graphs. No. Priya ran the simulation again. The instability remained. At 7 units, the network model changes, she said. We designed for 10. We simulated 10 identical profiles. Bell's machines are not identical. The plant used 3 dryer models from 2 manufacturers. Their cycle lengths varied. When 7 units communicated through one adaptive controller, the pressure predictions began chasing one another. The system was learning too aggressively. Instead of stabilizing the plant, it amplified uncertainty. Can we slow the model? I asked. We lose efficiency, Evelyn said. How much? Possibly below the guaranteed 25%. Can we split the network? 2 controllers. We have one. Priya looked toward the new cabinets. We can convert one operating module into a secondary controller. Then we lose a recovery unit, Carlos said. 9 units. Bell demanded 10. Evelyn erased half the whiteboard and began rewriting equations. Hours passed. Nothing worked. At midnight, Bell entered the control room. 4 new units were operational. 3 remained offline. The original 3 were running. 7 total. He looked at the row of dark enclosures. Tomorrow night, he said. We are close. You have been close for a week. We discovered a network instability. I discovered I have a contract with people who are not ready. Evelyn stepped forward. The safety system caught it before damage. I am glad your machines are good at turning themselves off. The sentence cut deep. Bell placed Rian's contract on the desk. I sign this tomorrow at 6. You saw their facility access code used during sabotage, I said. I saw Morrow use it. Rian provided it. Then prove Rian knew why. We will. After my business is dead? His voice rose for the first time. You think this is your war? It is my plant, my payroll, my contracts. If your experiment fails, you lose a company that did not exist 2 weeks ago. I lose one my father built for 40 years. The room went silent. He was right. That was the worst part. Bell looked at Evelyn. 7 units by tomorrow afternoon changes nothing. I contracted for 10. He left, the door closed. Evelyn stood before the whiteboard. For the first time, she looked defeated, not tired. Defeated. I designed it wrong, she said. No, Priya replied. You designed the first network model wrong. The contract promised 10. We still have time, I said. How much? 18 hours. That is not time. It is what we have. She looked at the equations. The architecture cannot stabilize 10 mixed units with 1 controller. Then stop trying to make 1 controller do it. She turned toward me. What? Victor believes the value is 1 brain controlling an entire factory. That is the value. Maybe that is the marketing value. Her expression sharpened. Explain. I pointed toward Bell's 3 dryer models. What if the plant does not need 1 brain? What if it needs groups, clusters? Each controller learns 1 machine family. Then the clusters exchange only high-level load predictions. Priya stepped closer. That reduces computational conflict. Evelyn began writing. 3 local models. 1 coordination layer. We only have 1 full adaptive server, Priya said. Use the operating cabinets. They are not powerful enough. They do not need to train, only predict. Carlos looked between them. How many units do we lose to controllers? None, Evelyn said. The defeat vanished. She pulled the control board from 1 inactive unit. We distribute the intelligence. That was the recovery. Not a miraculous fix, a colder design. The original platform depended on 1 central system. Powerful, elegant, vulnerable. The new architecture would divide control across every unit. Take 1. The others remained. Take 3. The network adapted. Seize a prototype. Nothing stopped. Victor's attack had forced us to build something harder to kill. We worked until our vision blurred. Priya rewrote the operating layer. Evelyn divided the adaptive logic into machine family clusters. I mapped the dryers by model, load, and exhaust behavior. Carlos installed new communication links between cabinets. At 6 in the morning, we started all 10 units. The first cycle recovered 22%. Below guarantee, the second reached 24. The third reached 26. No oscillation. The fourth reached 28. The fifth reached 31. By noon, 10 units were operating continuously. The cluster network stabilized at 32.7% verified recovery. Bell arrived at 12:30. He walked the line. 10 green indicators. 10 active systems. No shutdowns. His energy consultant presented preliminary meter data. Bell read it twice. Then he picked up Rion's contract. He did not tear it this time. He placed it in a shredder. The blades pulled Victor's offer into strips. "You met the deadline," he said. "Barely," I replied. "Barely counts." He held out his hand. I shook it. Then he looked at Evelyn. "What do you call the network?" She glanced at the 10 units communicating across the plant. "Meridian Grid." Bell nodded. "Make sure the name is protected before Hale announces it." That afternoon, Cross Meridian filed full patent applications on the modular recovery architecture, distributed adaptive controls, cluster coordination system, and field installation method. Rebecca submitted every document. Samuel funded accelerated review. Dana bound field test insurance. Anthony Russo began fabrication planning for 50 units. Lena secured our second commercial pilot. The paper mill restored its meeting. The frozen bakery chain called back. The setback had armed us. The arena was now fixed. Victor's Project Phoenix demonstration would begin at 10 the next morning. Our customer comparison event at Bell Hospitality Linen would begin at the same time. At 8, the Federal Trade Office would enter Archive Room 317 with Samuel as independent observer. At 9, Rebecca would attend the Emergency Technical Conference on the seized prototype. At 10, Victor would stand before shareholders and promise them a machine he had rushed into existence. The trap had 3 doors: the archive, the agency, the market. Victor knew about only one. That night, I stood alone beside the Meridian Grid while the plant continued operating. 10 green indicators blinked down the line. My phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Congratulations on Morrow." Warren was always disposable. Beneath it was a photograph. My uncle's watch lay on a polished black table beside an invitation to Victor's demonstration. Then a second message appeared. "Come collect it." I showed Evelyn. She read the words without expression. "He wants you inside Hale's plant tomorrow?" "Yes." "He knows we have the Bell event?" "Yes." "He wants to separate us?" "Yes." "What will you do?" I looked at the photograph again. The watch, the invitation, the oldest piece of my past placed beside the largest trap in my future. "I'm going." Her eyes hardened. "Noah, Victor expects me to stay here." "Exactly. That is not a reason. It is when both sides believe they understand the same move." She studied me. "What is the move?" I opened the invitation. It granted access not only to the demonstration floor. It included a private executive reception on the archive level. Room numbers were listed in small print: 312 through 320. Room 317 sat inside the reception zone. Daniel had invited me into the building. He believed I wanted to enter illegally. He thought the watch would pull me toward revenge. He did not know the federal government would already be opening the archive 2 hours earlier. He did not know Samuel would be inside. He did not know Marcus had given us the key. Most importantly, he did not know we no longer needed to steal anything. We needed Victor to act as though we did. I called Rebecca. "Tomorrow I am attending Hale's demonstration." "No, I have an invitation." "That makes entry lawful. It does not make wandering into restricted rooms lawful." "I will not enter room 317. "What will you do?" "Let Daniel believe I intend to." Silence. Then Rebecca asked, "What do you need from me?" "A preservation team ready to respond if Victor moves the archive." "You think he will?" "I think Daniel's invitation means they are preparing to catch me near it. And once they think you are inside, they may remove whatever they fear I will find." Rebecca understood. "If they move preserved materials after federal notice, they expose themselves." She exhaled slowly. "This is dangerous." "Yes. Do not improvise." "I will try." That is not an acceptable answer. It is the honest one. At 6 the next morning, we divided. Evelyn remained at Bell's plant with Priya, Carlos, Lena, Mr. Bell, customers, analysts, and Ashford technicians. Samuel left for the archive inspection. Rebecca went to the federal conference. I put on the only good suit I owned. It was the same borrowed tuxedo I had worn at Victor's gala, altered overnight by Lena's aunt to fit like it belonged to me. Before I left, Evelyn adjusted my tie. "If Daniel shows you the watch, do not take it." "I know." "If Victor insults you." "I know." She held the tie for 1 second longer. "Come back." The words were quiet. Not a command. Not something else. "I will." At 9:45, I arrived at Hale Industrial's flagship plant. Black cars filled the executive lot. Financial reporters waited near the entrance. Security checked my invitation twice. Then the doors opened. Inside, Victor's Project Phoenix machine stood beneath white lights, polished and silent. Daniel waited beside it. My uncle's watch was on his wrist. He smiled when he saw me. "You came." I looked at the watch. "You knew I would." Across the demonstration floor, Victor Hale turned toward us. Above him, a digital countdown reached 15 minutes, and 3 levels beneath our feet, the door to room 317 was about to open. Daniel wore my uncle's watch loosely, as though it were a trophy he had already grown bored with. The black leather strap circled his wrist. The scratched silver case caught the demonstration lights every time he moved his hand. He wanted me to look, so I did not. Instead, I studied Project Phoenix. The machine stood on a raised platform beside one of Hale Industrial's high-temperature finishing lines. Its housing was larger than ours and covered in matte black panels embossed with a silver phoenix. 3 digital screens showed pressure, temperature, and projected recovery. Projected, not measured. A wide glass wall separated the guests from the production equipment. Analysts, shareholders, government representatives, and major industrial customers gathered behind velvet ropes while camera crews aimed at the platform. Victor had built a theater. That was his real talent. He could turn uncertainty into lighting, theft into branding, and someone else's work into a speech about leadership. "You clean up well. You look nervous," he smiled. "I invited you. That is why you are nervous." He glanced toward the watch, waiting for a reaction. "I kept my Evelyn," he asked. "Working. Still letting her use you. Still pretending Victor values you." His smile thinned. Daniel had betrayed me for money because he believed money erased hierarchy. It did not. Victor would always see him as a useful man standing near the door. I saw that knowledge inside his face. He leaned closer. "You think one laundry contract changed your life. It changed yours. How? You had to break into it." For half a second, his expression froze. Then he laughed. "You have an active imagination. I also have security footage." "Then release it." "Not yet." That answer disturbed him. Good. People feared evidence most when they could not see where it would land. Across the floor, Victor spoke with Celeste Arden and 3 directors from a German manufacturing group. Celeste wore a cream suit and a diamond brooch, shaped like a bird in flight. She looked perfectly composed until she noticed me. Her gaze moved over my suit, then toward Daniel, then back to me. She excused herself from the group and approached. "Noah Reid," she said. "Victor's favorite cautionary tale." I thought Evelyn was his favorite. Celeste smiled. "Evelyn is not a cautionary tale. She is an administrative problem. You came to an industrial plant wearing diamonds, and you came wearing a borrowed suit. It fits better now." Her eyes sharpened. She remembered the gala, the waiter, the laughter. The suit had been altered, but not replaced. I wanted her to recognize it. "You should not be here," she said. "Daniel invited me." Celeste glanced at him. Daniel's confidence slipped almost invisibly. She had not known. "That mattered?" she asked. Daniel answered quickly. "Victor wanted Mr. Reid to see the difference between invention and execution." Celeste looked toward Victor. He was still speaking with the German directors, but his attention had shifted toward us. "No," she said softly. Victor wanted him outside. Daniel's jaw tightened. A hairline fracture appeared in their alliance. I filed it away. Celeste faced me again. "What do you expect to accomplish today?" "Yes, I expect to learn. From Victor, from the machine." Her gaze moved toward Project Phoenix. "Do you understand it?" "Enough. That sounds like envy. It sounds like caution." The lights dimmed before she could answer. A chime sounded. Guests moved toward the glass barrier. Victor ascended the platform as applause rolled through the room. Daniel stayed beside me. Celeste returned to the front row. The digital countdown reached 0. Victor smiled beneath the white lights. "Waste," he began, "is the tax industry pays for accepting yesterday's limits." The screens behind him displayed images of steel mills, textile plants, food factories, and cargo terminals. "We burn fuel, we create heat, we release that heat into the atmosphere. Then we purchase more energy to continue operating. For generations, industry has accepted this contradiction." He paused. The cameras moved closer. "At Hale Industrial, we do not accept contradictions. We engineer them out." Applause. Victor turned toward the black machine. Project Phoenix captures industrial waste heat and converts it into usable power through an adaptive recovery platform capable of learning from changing production conditions. The language belonged to Evelyn, not approximately, precisely. I had heard her say the same words in my apartment while instant noodles boiled over. Victor continued, "Today we will demonstrate a net energy reduction of at least 30% on a full-scale finishing line. 30%. A number high enough to move Hale's stock, low enough to achieve briefly, under controlled conditions." Behind the platform, technicians activated the production line. Fans started, burners ignited. The Phoenix housing remained silent. One screen showed heat entering the chamber. Another displayed simulated power output. The third displayed a recovery figure climbing slowly. 10%. 22. Victor narrated each increase. Guests leaned forward, phones recorded. At 26%, the number stalled. Victor continued speaking without looking at it. The adaptive cycle requires time to map the full production profile. The number rose. 28, 29.4, then 30.1. Applause erupted. Victor lifted one hand. The number continued. 32. Celeste smiled at the cameras. Daniel whispered beside me. Still think it is a lie? Yes. The number reached 33.8, too fast. Project Phoenix had been operating for less than 3 minutes. A real adaptive system could not verify stable net recovery that quickly across a full production line. They were showing an output calculation, not a complete energy balance. The burners might have been consuming more fuel to generate the recoverable heat. The line might have been operating below normal production load. The system might even have been drawing power from somewhere outside the displayed circuit. Victor was demonstrating a number, not savings. I searched the floor. Cables ran from the Phoenix housing into a control cabinet near the wall. One thick black line continued behind a temporary partition marked authorized personnel only. Daniel noticed where I was looking. Do not wander, I was admiring the execution. He shifted closer, that confirmed it. Something behind the partition mattered. My phone vibrated once inside my pocket. A coded message from Rebecca. Archive open. Samuel was inside room 317. Victor continued his speech. This is not a prototype. This is a production-ready platform. That claim changed the legal stakes. A prototype could fail. A production-ready system carried representations about safety, performance, ownership, and readiness. Victor had crossed from exaggeration into measurable fraud if any part was false. My phone vibrated again. 3 short pulses. The signal we had agreed on. Samuel had found relevant material. I kept my face neutral. On stage, the recovery display reached 35%. Victor smiled. Then the production line emitted a sharp metallic bang. The sound cut through the applause. A pressure alarm flashed on the Phoenix cabinet. One technician stepped forward. Another blocked him from view. Victor did not stop speaking. The system continuously adjusts to real-world variation. The recovery number dropped to 32, then rose again, too smoothly. The alarm continued flashing. No one acknowledged it. I looked at the exhaust stack above the finishing line. Vapor surged irregularly. The Phoenix chamber was not stabilizing pressure. It was being protected by an external bypass. That alone was not unusual. What mattered was where the bypassed heat went. I followed the overhead pipe. Behind the temporary partition, Daniel saw me track it. He stepped in front of my line of sight. The demonstration is this way. You should tell the alarm. His voice lowered. Do not cause a scene. I am not controlling the machine. You know what I mean. I did. He expected me to expose the problem. He wanted security to remove me. He wanted me near restricted areas. The invitation, the watch, the archive reception, all of it had been designed to create a story. Desperate failed businessman trespasses during a legitimate demonstration. Former friend attempts sabotage. Cross Meridian founders steal trade secrets. Victor did not only need his machine to succeed, he needed me to fail publicly beside it, so I remained still. The Phoenix display reached 36.2%. The audience applauded again. At Bell Hospitality Linen, Evelyn's Meridian grid had already surpassed 1,000 combined operating hours. Our numbers were verified. Victor's were projected. The difference was invisible inside a polished room. For now, Victor completed the first demonstration cycle and invited questions. A financial analyst raised her hand. How does Project Phoenix compare with emerging systems from Cross Meridian Labs? Victor had planted the question. His expression showed no surprise. Hale Industrial does not comment on unverified workshop experiments. A few guests laughed. He continued. However, innovation requires more than assembling salvaged components in borrowed facilities. It requires safety certification, manufacturing scale, service infrastructure, and intellectual property integrity. Every phrase was aimed at us. Another analyst asked, does Hale own the foundational patents? Marcus stood near the platform. His face went rigid. Victor answered without looking at him. Hale Industrial owns all relevant technology developed through its research operations. Not exactly, yes. Not legally safe, but close enough to become evidence. My phone vibrated again. Samuel's message contained one-word valuation. The report existed. Victor's father had independently valued Evelyn's work. I glanced toward Marcus. He was staring at Victor. The chief legal officer had just heard his employer make a public ownership claim that Marcus knew was disputed. Another crack opened. A customer from the German group raised his hand. When can the first units ship? Initial deployments begin next quarter, Victor said. The answer was immediate. Too immediate for a system that had just triggered a pressure alarm. The Germans exchanged looks. They wanted scale. Victor sold scale. That was why we could not defeat him with technical superiority alone. We needed the machine to condemn him, not us. A factory director near the front asked whether the 36% figure represented net facility savings or heat conversion efficiency. Victor gestured toward the Rion regional director. The man stepped onto the platform. Project Phoenix measures net recoverable energy against the target line's thermal waste profile. The director avoided the word savings. The customer pressed. Does that include additional burner load? A pause small. But there. The Rion director smiled. The demonstration operates under a calibrated industrial profile. Still no answer. I saw an analyst write something down. Good. The room was beginning to ask the right questions. Victor stepped in. Let us allow the data to speak. A screen displayed a bright green 36.4%. The room applauded because the number told them to. Then every light on the production floor flickered. The Phoenix system emitted a low mechanical shudder. The pressure alarm turned red. Technicians moved rapidly behind the platform. Victor continued smiling. A sharp hiss came from the overhead bypass. The recovery display remained fixed at 36.4. Frozen. The machine had stopped updating. But the number stayed on screen. A recorded output, not live data, the German director noticed. So the display is not real-time? Victor's smile tightened. Minor communication delay. The hiss grew louder. One of the technicians reached for an emergency shutdown. The Rion director caught his wrist. I saw it. So did two analysts. The technician pulled free. The system kept running. Victor would not allow a shutdown in front of the room. He was gambling with the plant to protect the demonstration. My anger turned cold. This was no longer branding. People could be hurt. I moved toward the safety barrier. Daniel blocked me. Stay where you are. That chamber is overpressuring. You do not know that. It is a sensor fault. Then shut it down. He stepped closer. You came to watch. I raised my voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. Your pressure alarm is active. Several heads turned. Daniel grabbed my arm. That was his mistake. Cameras shifted toward us. Security approached. Victor looked across the platform. His eyes found mine. For 1 second, the room held both stories. The celebrated executive on stage. The bankrupt waiter causing trouble. Exactly the scene he wanted. Then the Phoenix housing buckled inward, with a sound like a car door crushed by machinery. The audience screamed. A steel panel tore loose and struck the glass barrier. The reinforced glass held. Steam exploded from the bypass assembly. Technicians hit the emergency controls. The finishing line shut down. Lights went dark across half the floor. Security released me and turned toward the platform. Victor stood beneath emergency lighting, his face white. The recovery display still showed 36.4%. Perfect. False. Smoke drifted above Project Phoenix. The German director spoke first. That number is fabricated. Victor turned. It is a display delay. The system is offline. Recorded data remains visible during shutdown. Then it was never a live reading. The room changed. Applause disappeared. So did obedience. People began asking questions at once. Was anyone injured? Had the system passed safety review? Was the 30% claim independently verified? Was the product actually production ready? Did Hale own the patents? Victor raised his hands. This was a controlled pressure release event. A technician stared at him in disbelief. The man's sleeve had been burned near the wrist. Controlled, he said. Microphones caught the word. Victor looked at him. The technician pointed toward the damaged housing. You disabled the automatic shutdown. The room went silent. The Rion director stepped forward. That is not accurate. You told me to hold the line. The chamber exceeded limit. Stop talking. Too late. Every camera in the room was recording. Victor moved toward the technician. Your name? The threat was obvious. The technician's face changed. Fear became anger. Ethan Cole. Victor lowered his voice. You are confused, Ethan? No. Ethan looked toward the cameras. The system failed twice last night. We were ordered to reset the logs. The Rion director grabbed his arm. Ethan pulled free. The recovery number was modeled. The external steam loop supplied additional heat. It was not net savings. The German directors began speaking to one another in sharp whispers. Analysts moved toward the exit while making calls. Hale's stock was still trading. This room could move billions before lunch. Victor pointed at security. Remove him. No one moved immediately. That hesitation was the first public sign that his authority had limits. Daniel released my arm. His face had gone gray. I looked at the watch. This time he saw me notice it. He covered it with his sleeve. My phone vibrated. Rebecca. I answered. Tell me. Her voice was controlled. The trade office completed its initial review of the seized prototype. And no export-controlled turbine technology. No restricted architecture. The complaint was technically unsupported. Who filed it? They have not formally disclosed the source. Formally, the submission included supporting materials created by Rion Energy and transmitted through Hale Industrial Council. I looked at Marcus. He was already on his phone, speaking with someone away from Victor. Did Marcus file it? No. The transmission came through outside counsel. Can we announce the review? The agency is preparing a written release. When? Soon. How soon? Check your email. A document arrived. Preliminary technical determination. The seizure basis had collapsed. The prototype would be returned. More importantly, the agency had stated that Cross Meridian's design did not match the controlled turbine system identified by the complainant. Victor's complaint was not merely wrong. It was based on a false technical comparison. I forwarded the document to Samuel, then to Mr. Bell, then to every analyst Rebecca had approved in advance. I did not post it publicly. I did not need to. Within 3 minutes, phones across the demonstration floor began buzzing. One analyst read the determination aloud. Hale's complaint was rejected. Another asked, did Hale use federal review to delay a competitor? Victor stepped down from the platform. This event is concluded. No one listened. Celeste moved toward him. What complaint? He ignored her. She caught his arm. You told me Cross Meridian was under a legitimate export investigation. They were. The agency says the allegation was unsupported. Victor lowered his voice. This is not the place. Celeste looked at the damaged machine, the burned technician, and the analysts calling their offices. It became the place when you put my family's money behind Phoenix. That fracture widened. Celeste's father's private equity group had financed Hale's expansion. If Project Phoenix had supported the valuation, then Phoenix's collapse threatened her family too. She had believed she was marrying control. Now she saw risk. Victor looked toward me. The hatred in his eyes was almost physical. You did this. I shook my head. I stood behind the rope. He started toward me. Marcus stepped between us. Victor. No. The words stopped him. Marcus had never contradicted him publicly. Victor stared. Marcus's voice remained low. The audit committee has called an emergency session. Cancel it. I cannot. I am chief executive. You are the subject. The room around them heard every word. Victor's face emptied. What subject? Marcus glanced toward Margaret Hale, who had entered through the executive corridor with 2 outside directors and a federal preservation officer. She was 68, silver-haired, and carried herself with the rigid calm of someone who had spent a lifetime watching men confuse inheritance with competence. In her hand was a thick red folder. Room 317 had opened. Margaret stopped before Victor. The board will meet now. He looked at the folder. What is that? Your father's independent research valuation. Celeste turned toward him. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Daniel began moving toward the exit. I stepped into his path. Leaving? I have another meeting, so do I. His wrist shifted. The watch showed. I held out my hand. Give it back. He laughed nervously. You sold it. You bought it to threaten me. I do not need to. He looked past me toward security. But security was watching Victor. Daniel lowered his voice. You think today ends anything? No. You are still small. Then why are you running? His face hardened. He reached for my shoulder. I caught his wrist. Not violently, firmly. The leather strap pressed beneath my fingers. For 2 years I had imagined confronting Daniel. In those fantasies, I shouted. Sometimes I hit him. Sometimes I forced him to confess. None of it happened. I simply unfastened the watch. He stared at me. You cannot take that. It was purchased as part of a conspiracy to intimidate and monitor me. That is insane. The salvage yard video shows North Quay's vehicle. Bell's footage shows it on the saboteur. Warren Pike's emails show your payment chain. The color left his face. I placed the watch in my pocket. Call the police. He did not. He knew Rebecca had already done it. 2 investigators entered the demonstration floor through the main doors. They were not from the trade office. Industrial fraud. Daniel looked toward Victor. Victor did not look back. That was the moment Daniel understood he had always been disposable. The investigators approached. Daniel Mercer? He stepped away from me. I want counsel. You may call counsel. We need to speak with you regarding North Quay Capital's payments to Morrow Industrial Controls. I know nothing about Morrow. Warren Pike says otherwise. Daniel's mouth opened. No words came out. The weakest full antagonist had already fallen. Now the next one stood exposed beneath the same lights he had used to humiliate me. The investigators escorted Daniel from the floor. He did not look powerful. He looked small, just as he had made me feel when I stood in the empty office of my first company and realized the accounts were gone. I touched the watch inside my pocket. My uncle's name was still engraved on the back. Nothing Daniel had done could remove it. Across the room, Margaret Hale opened the red folder. She did not wait for privacy. Victor, your father commissioned this report 6 years ago after receiving allegations that executive leadership had misattributed research contributions. Victor's jaw tightened. My father was ill. The evaluators were not. She removed the first page. The report concludes that Evelyn Cross was directly responsible for energy efficiency improvements, generating more than $480 million in cumulative enterprise value. The room went still. $480 million. Victor had paid Evelyn $80,000 a year. He had claimed her projects produced no revenue. Margaret continued. It further concludes that Hale Industrial's thermal recovery portfolio depended substantially on foundational methods created by Cross Meridian Labs before Evelyn entered Hale employment. Celeste's face changed. The analysts stopped leaving. Cameras returned. Victor stepped forward. That report was never adopted. It was suppressed. It was preliminary. It contains laboratory records, access logs, authorship files, and signed statements from 23 engineers. Ethan Cole, the burn technician, stared at Evelyn's name in the report as if a hidden truth had finally become visible. Margaret lifted another document. There is also a memorandum from your father directing that Evelyn be offered independent licensing compensation and a board-level research position. Victor's voice dropped. He died before implementation. You canceled it 3 days after his funeral. The physical collapse began there. Not dramatic. A tiny movement. Victor's shoulders lowered. His skin lost color. The man who had filled the ballroom with laughter now looked as though the room had become too large around him. Celeste stepped away from him. Only one step. Enough. Margaret faced Marcus. Has Hale Industrial asserted ownership contrary to this report? Marcus answered carefully. Yes. Did you advise the chief executive that the foundational filing predated Hale employment? Yes. Did he instruct you to find another legal conclusion? Marcus looked at Victor, then at the cameras. Yes. Victor turned on him. You ungrateful coward. Marcus did not move. I preserved the company. You betrayed me. I stopped obeying you. The words landed harder than anger. Margaret closed the folder. The emergency board meeting begins in 10 minutes. Until then, Victor Hale is suspended from all executive authority. A sound moved through the room. Not applause. Shock. Victor stared at his aunt. You cannot suspend me on a factory floor. The location does not alter the vote. I control the board. Not anymore. She looked toward Celeste. Every face turned. Celeste's father's fund controlled 2 board seats and enough preferred shares to determine the balance. Victor saw it. So did she. He approached her slowest. She held his gaze. You said Phoenix was ready. It was sabotaged. By whom? I laughed once. Victor's eyes flashed. Celeste looked toward the security barrier. Noah Reid stood in the audience. He manipulated the pressure event. How? Victor had no answer. She continued. You said Evelyn's work had no independent value. It does not. Margaret held up the valuation report. Celeste's voice became quieter. You said the federal investigation would eliminate Cross Meridian. It should have. There it was. Not a legal admission, a personal one. He had expected the government action to destroy us. Celeste stepped back again. I will not attach ardent capital to you until the audit is complete. Victor reached for her. She moved away. The diamond bird on her jacket caught the emergency lights. He looked around the room. Directors would not meet his eyes. Security awaited Margaret's orders. Analysts transmitted updates. Customers called lawyers. Ethan held his burned wrist while a medic treated him. The Phoenix machine stood broken behind Victor, its false number still glowing green. 36.4%. A perfect lie frozen above wreckage. Victor found me again. He crossed the floor. No one stopped him. Not because he remained powerful. Because everyone wanted to hear what he would say. You think she made you rich? His voice shook. Not much. Enough I remembered the ballroom, his scotch, the silver gown, the suitcases hitting marble, the laughter. Let the bankrupt waiter support the useless woman. That cruel line had lived inside me since the night he spoke it. Now the same people who admired him were watching. I looked at him and gave it back. You told me quieted, so I did. Victor's face tightened. I leaned closer. Thank you. Something shattered behind him. Celeste had dropped her champagne glass. The stem rolled across the floor. Victor did not turn. His hand moved toward my jacket. Security stepped forward. I raised one finger. They stopped. I wanted him close enough to hear the next sentence. You thought you were throwing away a burden, I said. You handed me the only person in your company who knew where the value came from. His eyes were bloodshot. I made her know. I looked toward the red folder in Margaret's hand. She made you. He struck me. His fist caught the side of my mouth. The cameras captured everything. Security seized him instantly. Victor fought them. Not like a chief executive, like a frightened man trapped inside a suit. You stole my company, he shouted. Blood filled my mouth. I wiped it with my thumb. I have not bought it yet. That silenced him. Yet the word traveled through the room. Margaret Hale looked at me sharply. Celeste did the same. Victor stopped fighting. For the first time, fear replaced rage completely. He understood the possibility. Cross Meridian's technology had exposed Hale's dependence. The valuation report had exposed Evelyn's contribution. The Phoenix failure had threatened customer confidence. The federal complaint had created regulatory scrutiny. The fraud investigation had reached Daniel and North Quay. If Hale's stock fell far enough, someone could begin buying, someone like us. I had not planned to say it publicly, but once spoken, it became another open door. Victor was dragged toward the executive corridor. At the threshold, he twisted to face me. This company carries my name. I touched the watch in my pocket. So did my uncle's garage. His expression shifted. He knew what Daniel had done. Maybe he had ordered it. Maybe he had only enjoyed the result. Either way, he understood the answer. Names did not protect buildings. People did. Victor disappeared behind the doors. The board meeting began without him. Within 20 minutes, Hale Industrial formally suspended its chief executive pending investigation. Within 30, trading in Hale shares was halted after the stock fell more than 20%. Within 40, the German manufacturing group announced it was delaying all Project Phoenix negotiations. Rian issued a statement blaming an unauthorized test configuration. Ethan Cole released photographs of prior Phoenix failures to Rebecca. The trade office announced the return of Cross Meridian's prototype. The industrial fraud unit confirmed North Quay Capital was under investigation. The reversal spread faster than Victor's press release ever had. But the final blow came from Bell Hospitality Linen. At 11:30, while Hale's demonstration floor still smelled of steam and burned insulation, Evelyn began her event. No stage. No Phoenix logo. No projected numbers. Ran across 80 industrial dryers while independent meters recorded energy use. Customers walked the floor. Analysts watched raw data. Mr. Bell opened his utility dashboards and showed them 6 months of historical consumption. Priya explained the distributed controls. Carlos opened one enclosure and let engineers inspect the pressure cartridges. Lena served baked ziti from the factory that had become our second pilot. Samuel joined by video from Hale's archive level and confirmed the design's independent technical lineage. At noon, the verified Meridian grid reduction reached 33.1% across full production. Not modeled recovery, net energy savings. The report went out to every guest. At 12:15, the paper mill signed a pilot agreement. At 12:27, the frozen bakery chain signed for 6 ovens. At 12:40, a hotel group requested proposals for 3 linen plants. By 1, projected contracted revenue exceeded $3 million. By 2, Anthony Russo expanded fabrication capacity. By 3, Samuel's full investment cleared regulatory review. Cross Meridian had cash, contracts, certification access, protected patents, and operating proof. Victor had a broken machine. I drove back to Bell's plant after the board meeting announcement. When I entered, workers applauded. I hated it at first. Then I saw Evelyn. She stood beside the control room glass wearing a green blouse Lena had bought her that morning. Green. Her color. Not silver. She looked at the cut on my lip. He hit you. He was emotional. You promised not to improvise. I did not hit him back. That is a low standard. It is progress. She walked closer. Around us, customers examined the Meridian grid. Analysts asked questions. Bell's machines continued running. None of it felt real until she touched the bruise near my mouth. You came back, she said. I said I would. I removed my uncle's watch from my pocket. The strap was damaged. The case was scratched worse than before, but the hand still moved. Evelyn looked at it. You got it back. Daniel was careless. You took it from him? He did not object loudly. She turned the watch over. The engraving remained. For honest work and better days. My uncle had given it to me when I opened the first company. I had believed I lost the better days with the garage. I had been wrong. Evelyn fastened the watch around my wrist. Then she opened one of the black notebooks. On the inside cover was the line she had written after I sold it for $20. Debt owed to Noah Reid. One watch. Irreplaceable. She crossed it out. Not by you. Close enough. My phone rang. Rebecca. Her voice carried no celebration. That warned me. What happened? The board suspended Victor, but he remains a major shareholder. How much? Directly and through trusts, approximately 28%. Enough to fight. Yes. What else? North Quay's records are incomplete. Daniel is cooperating selectively, meaning he is offering Rayan. Not Victor. Correct. The latter remained. Warren had fallen. Daniel was falling. Rian stood exposed. Victor remained standing. Damage suspended, not destroyed. Rebecca continued. Before trading halted, an unknown buyer accumulated Hale shares through several entities. How much? Just under 5%? Victor? No. Celeste family? They deny it. Margaret? No. I looked through the glass at Evelyn. Who we do not know yet, a new player, or an old one hiding behind shells. The market had smelled blood. Someone else was entering the war. Then Evelyn's phone rang. She answered. Her expression changed slowly. Who is this? She listened. The noise of the plant seemed to recede around her. One other pause. Then she looked at me. Not afraid. Alert, she placed the call on speaker. A man's voice filled the control room. Calder. Unknown. Miss Cross, congratulations on today's demonstration. Identify yourself. My name is Adrian Vale. Samuel, standing across the room, went completely still. I noticed. So did Evelyn. The voice continued. I represent the entities that purchased Hale Industrial shares this morning. I watched Samuel's face. He knew the name. Why are you calling us? I asked. Because Victor Hale is wounded, not finished. His suspension will not last unless someone controls the next vote. What do you want? Evelyn repeated. To discuss an alliance. Samuel crossed the room and took the phone from her hand. No. The single word carried decades of history. Adrian Vale laughed softly. Samuel, still protecting inventors from the cost of ambition? You stay away from them. Too late. The call ended. I looked at Samuel. Who is Adrian Vale? He handed the phone back. The last person you want buying a broken empire. Is he worse than Victor? Samuel looked through the glass at the 10 green meridian indicators. No. He picked up his cane. He is smarter. Outside the plant, financial networks were already announcing Victor Hale's collapse. Inside, our contracts continued multiplying. Evelyn stood beside me. No longer homeless, no longer invisible, no longer anyone's discarded wife. Victor had lost the boardroom. Daniel had lost his protection. Rian had lost its demonstration. But the company carrying Victor's name still existed, and a silent buyer had placed one hand around its throat. The final enemy was still standing. And now someone else wanted the crown. Adrian Vale did not wait for permission. By 7 the next morning, he had increased his position in Hale Industrial to 7%. By 9, 2 institutional investors publicly demanded permanent leadership changes. By 10, Victor Hale filed an emergency petition challenging his suspension. By noon, every person who had called him finished was forced to admit he still had teeth. He owned enough shares to block certain transactions. He controlled family trusts that had not yet turned against him. He still had loyal executives inside procurement, finance, and overseas operations. Most dangerous of all, he understood the company's debt structure better than anyone except Marcus. A wounded man with no exit was predictable. A wounded man who owned the building was not. Samuel gathered us inside Ashford's conference room that afternoon. Evelyn sat beside me. Rebecca Sloan occupied the opposite side of the table, with 3 folders arranged in perfect alignment. Margaret Hale joined by secure video from the board office. Marcus appeared on a second screen from an undisclosed location. Nobody mentioned why the chief legal officer was hiding. We already knew. Victor had accused him of conspiring to steal the company. Margaret opened the meeting. Adrian Vale controls 7.2% of outstanding shares through 3 disclosed entities. We believe additional positions are hidden through derivatives. How much voting power? I asked. Unknown until settlement. Can he control the board? Not alone. Samuel leaned on his cane. He never moves alone. Evelyn looked at him. You know him. That was not the question. Samuel's mouth tightened. Adrian built Vale Strategic by buying companies during moments of public weakness. He does not repair them. He separates whatever can survive from whatever can be sold. Asset stripping, I said. He calls it disciplined restructuring. Rebecca opened one folder. Hale Industrial has 14 major divisions. 4 are profitable, 3 are stable. 7 depend on internal financing, shared guarantees, or cross-subsidies. And Cross Meridian's technology could improve the weak factories, Evelyn said. Yes, Margaret replied, which is why Adrian wants you. To save the company? Samuel shook his head. To raise the price of the pieces. The room fell quiet. Adrian did not need Victor gone because Victor was cruel. He needed Victor gone because Victor had damaged the asset. He did not care whether Evelyn received credit. He cared whether her work could restore margins before the sale. What happens if we refuse? I asked. Margaret answered. He may ally with Victor. That was the nightmare. Adrian's shares combined with Victor's 28%, the family trusts, and a few frightened directors could restore Victor's authority. Victor would return stronger. Not because anyone trusted him, because Adrian could use him. Marcus spoke from the second screen. There is another problem. He looked exhausted. His collar was open. His face carried the gray tone of someone who had spent the night reading threats. Victor moved funds before his suspension. How much? Margaret asked. Approximately $180 million through intercompany transfers. To where? A Hale industrial subsidiary in Singapore. Rebecca's posture changed. Who controls the subsidiary? Victor through delegated authority that was not revoked until after the transfer. What is the money for? I asked. Officially, strategic technology acquisition. Evelyn looked at me. Rion. Marcus nodded. Victor arranged to acquire Rion Energy's core assets. I almost laughed. After the failed demonstration, Rion should have been a liability. Victor was buying it anyway. Why? I asked. To control the engineer's contracts and evidence, Rebecca said. And to stop Rion from cooperating, Marcus added. Margaret's expression hardened. Can the transfer be reversed? Not easily. Can Victor close the acquisition while suspended? He claims the agreement became binding before suspension. Samuel tapped his cane once against the floor. He is buying the witness. Rion stood between Daniel and Victor. If Victor absorbed the company, he gained control over its records, employees, technical failures, and communications. He could bury Project Phoenix inside a larger acquisition. He could label the disaster a development issue. He could fire Ethan Cole. He could settle with injured workers. He could make every email disappear into an international data migration. The final antagonist was not waiting for the board. He was erasing the path leading to him. When does the Rion deal close? I asked. Marcus looked at a document. Tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon. Less than 26 hours, Rebecca closed her folder. We seek an injunction. On what basis? Margaret asked. Self-dealing, transfer of corporate assets during suspension, preservation risk, fraud exposure. Will it arrive in time? No guarantee. Samuel looked at me. You are thinking something reckless. I am thinking Victor needs $180 million to close. The money has already moved, Marcus said. Moved is not settled. His eyes sharpened. I continued. What bank? Atlantic Crown International. What conditions? The payment is held pending final delivery of Rion's assets and representations. Representations about what? Ownership, undisclosed liabilities, regulatory status, and material litigation. Rebecca understood. If Rion has an undisclosed criminal exposure. It does, I said. Warren Pike. Counterfeit components. Bell sabotage, federal complaint. Those facts are under investigation, Rebecca replied. The bank may require formal notice. Who can provide it? Regulators. Counsel. A party to the transaction. All eyes turned toward Marcus. He looked away. I am Hale Industrial's chief legal officer. Exactly, I said. I cannot sabotage a lawful acquisition approved before suspension. You can disclose material risk. I already advised the executive committee. Privately? Yes. Then Victor can say he addressed it. Marcus remained silent. I leaned toward the screen. Victor told you to find another legal answer. Yes. He publicly claimed ownership he knew was disputed. Yes. He used outside counsel to support a false federal complaint. We believe so. He transferred $180 million while expecting suspension. Yes. And you are still worried about appearing disloyal? His face hardened. You think this is cowardice. I think you spent years protecting the institution by protecting the man damaging it. Margaret closed her eyes briefly. Marcus stared at me. I continued before he could answer. You gave us the key because you knew the archive mattered. You preserved the records. You refused to lie about the patent. You stood between Victor and the board. I pointed toward the screen. But none of that matters if tomorrow he buys Rion and destroys the chain. The silence stretched. Then Marcus removed his glasses. My father worked at Hale Industrial for 36 years, he said. He died believing the company would outlive the family. That is not a reason to let Victor own it. No. Marcus put his glasses back on. It is a reason to finish this correctly. He looked at Rebecca. Prepare a material risk notice for Atlantic Crown. I will sign it. That was the first weapon. The second came from Evelyn. She opened one of the black notebooks and turned to a page marked with a red tab. Rion cannot deliver what Victor is buying. What do you mean? I asked. Project Phoenix uses my adaptive timing sequence. The stolen cycle data. Not only that, she placed two diagrams side by side. One showed the first Cross Meridian prototype. The other showed an old Hale plant control method. Rian combined stolen cycle maps industrial used in its Newark retrofit. Your retrofit? Samuel said. Yes. Does Hale own the protocol? Rebecca asked. No, Margaret frowned. Why not? Because I licensed a base control library from Westbridge University while developing the retrofit. Hale received internal use rights, not transfer rights. Marcus's face changed. Was that license disclosed? It should be in the archive. He searched through a digital folder. Seconds passed. I found it. What does it say? I asked. Non-assignable, non-transferable, no sub-licensing without written university consent. Did Rian receive consent? Evelyn asked. No. Then Project Phoenix contains technology Rian has no right to sell, and Hale has no right to acquire from them, Rebecca said. The second weapon. The third came from the man at the bottom of the ladder, Warren Pike. He requested another interview that evening. Rebecca attended remotely, while industrial fraud investigators questioned him. We watched from Ashford's secure room. Warren looked smaller than he had in photographs. His hair was uncombed. His hands moved constantly. I want protection, he said. The lead investigator remained expressionless. You want consideration? I want my family left alone. By whom? Warren looked toward the camera. Daniel Mercer. Daniel is in custody. Daniel works for people. Name them. Warren swallowed. Rian's regional director, Malcolm Voss. The man from Victor's demonstration. The man who had held Ethan's wrist instead of shutting down Project Phoenix. What? The investigator asked. Supply sensors that would fail certification. For Cross Meridian? Yes. Why? To delay their Bell installation. Who selected the timing? Daniel. Who paid? North Quay. Who funded North Quay? I do not know. The investigator slid a bank record across the table. Try again. Warren stared, collapsed. Rian, directly, through consulting invoices. Who authorized the invoices? Voss. Did Voss ever mention Victor Hale? Warren hesitated. Rebecca leaned toward the speaker. This was the rung we needed. Warren's voice dropped. Once. What did he say? He said the chairman wanted Cross Meridian unable to demonstrate before Phoenix launched. Which chairman? Victor Hale. The investigator did not react. Exact words. Warren closed his eyes. Victor wants them dark until launch. After that, nobody went still. Not an implication. Not a prediction. A statement connecting Victor to the sabotage objective. Was that recorded? I asked Rebecca. Yes. Admissible, potentially. It requires corroboration. Malcolm Voss's communications are inside the Rian acquisition data room. Can you access them? Rebecca asked. I can request access as Hale counsel. Will they know? Yes, then do it, I said. Marcus Samuel spoke before I could. Correctly, remember? Marcus nodded. He submitted the request. Rian denied it. That denial became the fourth weapon. A company asking Hale Industrial for $180 million refused Hale's chief legal officer access to executive communications relevant to criminal allegations. Atlantic Crown would not ignore that. At 9 that night, Marcus signed the material risk notice. Rebecca attached the Westbridge license. Industrial fraud attached confirmation that Rian personnel were subjects of inquiry. Ethan Cole provided photographs of disabled safety controls and copied test logs. Warren's statement remained sealed, but investigators confirmed the acquisition involved material evidence. The package reached Atlantic Crown before midnight. At 12:14, the bank froze settlement pending enhanced diligence. Victor's $180 million stopped between accounts. Not returned, not delivered. Trapped at 12:20, Adrian Vale called me. I answered in the hallway. You are making the company cheaper, he said. You sound unhappy, That is worse. You blocked Rian. The bank blocked Rian. Do not insult me with structure. What do you want? A meeting? No. You will attend the shareholders session tomorrow. How do you know? Because Margaret needs your contracts and Evelyn's licensing position to support a restructuring plan. He was right. I hated that. Adrian continued. Victor will propose restoring himself as chief executive to defend the company against hostile forces. You and you. We are not hostile. You publicly said you might buy Hale. I said not yet. He laughed softly. You understand language better than most founders. What is your proposal? Cross Meridian licenses technology to Hale Industrial. I provide board support to remove Victor permanently. Hale closes profitable assets and funds your global manufacturing. What percentage of Cross Meridian? 25. No. I had not stated the valuation, not control. You sound like Evelyn. That is a compliment. You sound like Evelyn. That is a compliment. No. Victor did. Adrian paused. then attend tomorrow and watch what fear costs. He ended the call. At 8 the next morning, Hale Industrial's emergency shareholder session began inside the same halcyon grand ballroom where Victor had thrown Evelyn out. He chose the location. Of course he did. He wanted to reclaim the room. 300 chairs faced a black stage. The crystal chandeliers shone above polished marble. The staircase where Evelyn had stood in her silver gown remained unchanged. This time she entered beside me wearing green. Not bright green, deep emerald. The notebooks were not in her hands. They were secured with Rebecca. She carried nothing. She did not need proof to look powerful anymore. People recognized her. That was new. Analysts moved toward her. Engineers introduced themselves. Shareholders whispered her name. No one called her Victor's ex-wife. They called her the founder of Cross Meridian. Victor arrived 10 minutes later through a side entrance. He wore a navy suit and the expression of a man attending his own coronation. His suspension remained active. Security still treated him carefully because of his shares. He walked through the ballroom as though nothing had changed. Celeste did not accompany him, that mattered. Daniel did not accompany him. That mattered more. Malcolm Voss was absent. Rion's regional director had retained criminal counsel before dawn. Adrian Vale sat in the front row alone. He was in his early 50s, lean silver at the temples, dressed more simply than Victor. Nothing about him demanded attention. That was why everyone watched him. Samuel sat across the aisle. They did not greet each other. Margaret opened the session at 9. She summarized the Phoenix failure, the regulatory determination, the archive findings, the pending fraud investigation, the frozen Rian settlement, and the board's suspension decision. Victor waited without interruption. When she finished, he stood. This company is under attack. His voice filled the ballroom. The attackers include opportunistic investors, disgruntled former employees, failed entrepreneurs, hostile regulators misled by incomplete information, and members of my own family who have forgotten how Hale Industrial became powerful. He looked directly at Evelyn. Project Phoenix experienced a correctable engineering incident. Ethan Cole sat near the rear with his burned wrist bandaged. Victor continued. The underlying technology remains valuable, which is precisely why Cross Meridian has launched a coordinated campaign to seize our intellectual property and damage our market position. The lie was larger now. Not Evelyn stole from Hale. Cross Meridian attacked Hale. He turned toward me. Noah Reid publicly threatened to acquire this company while standing beside a failed demonstration he helped provoke. Murmurs moved through the room. Rebecca whispered, "Do not react." I did not. Victor placed both hands on the podium. I propose immediate restoration of executive authority, termination of negotiations with hostile entities, completion of the Rion acquisition, and legal action against Cross Meridian Labs. He paused. Only decisive leadership can prevent this company from being dismantled. Adrian watched without expression. Victor's strategy was clear. Make Adrian the monster. Make us his accomplices. Make Victor the only barrier between Hale Industrial and destruction. It would work on frightened shareholders. Fear loved familiar faces. Margaret allowed questions. A family trust representative stood. If Victor is not restored, what alternative plan exists? Silence. The board had investigations. It had no future. That was Victor's opening. He smiled slightly. Then Adrian Vale rose. I have a plan. The ballroom shifted toward him. Samuel's expression hardened. Adrian walked to the center aisle. Sell 7 unprofitable divisions. Retain 4 high-margin industrial businesses. Separate environmental liabilities. Replace executive leadership. License Cross Meridian technology across the surviving platform. He looked toward Evelyn. In exchange for a 25% ownership position in Cross Meridian Labs. There it was. Public. Not an alliance. An attempted purchase. Shareholders reacted with interest. Victor laughed. You see? He wants to carve Hale apart and steal her company at the same time. Adrian did not look at him. The current structure consumes cash and hides weak assets behind profitable ones. You are a liquidator. I am honest about numbers. You destroy legacies. I remove sentiment from capital. Samuel stood. And people from the consequences. Adrian turned toward him. At last, the room sensed history but did not understand it. Samuel spoke to the shareholders. 31 years ago, Adrian's father acquired Ashford Thermal Systems during a debt crisis. He promised investment. He closed the research division, sold the patents, terminated 800 workers, and tripled his money. Adrian's face remained calm. My father purchased a failed company. He made sure it stayed failed. You kept one laboratory and called survival virtue. I kept the people who built the value. Adrian looked toward us, and now they need capital again. Evelyn rose. No. The single word cut through both men. She walked into the aisle. We will not give Adrian Vale 25% of Cross Meridian. Shareholders began whispering. Adrian studied her. Then what do you propose? Access. To what? Margaret asked. Hale Industrials factories. Victor laughed again. You want our facilities. I want contracts. She faced the shareholders. 7 divisions are underperforming because their energy costs, maintenance systems, and production controls are obsolete. Selling them now locks in the lowest possible value. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Evelyn continued. Cross Meridian will install Meridian grid systems under performance contracts, no upfront equipment purchase. We are paid from verified savings. A shareholder called out. How much can you save? Bell Hospitality Lenin achieved more than 33% net reduction. That is a laundry. Hale's ceramics division wastes more recoverable heat in one day than Bell's plant does in a month. She turned toward Margaret. Give us 90 days of technical access. We will audit the 7 weak divisions and present binding performance proposals. Victor struck the podium. She wants entry into our operations. Yes, I said. I stood beside Evelyn. Not ownership. Every face turned toward me, I continued. Victor offers fear. We offer measurable liquidation. Adrian smiled faintly. You cannot finance 7 divisions. Not alone. Samuel, partly. Debt, partly. Then you need institutional capital. Yes, mine. No. His smile disappeared. I looked toward the shareholders. Cross Meridian will create a project vehicle for each facility. Investors fund equipment. Hale pays only from verified savings. No investor receives equity in Cross Meridian. A pension fund representative leaned forward. What return? Fixed priority, return plus performance participation. Security installed equipment, contracted savings, and facility-specific guarantees. Adrian understood before most of the room. I was offering his capital a place, not his control. You want me to finance projects without owning the platform, he said. I want any qualified investor to compete. The insult was structural. Adrian could participate. He could not dominate. Victor's expression darkened. He saw the room moving away from both of them. Margaret asked, what does Cross Meridian require? Technical access, Evelyn said. Independent metering. Protection of our intellectual property. No interference by current or former executives. She looked directly at Victor. And full cooperation with the investigations. Victor stepped away from the podium. This is extortion. No, she said, this is the first contract in this room that does not ask someone to surrender ownership. The callback hung in the air. He had demanded her notebooks in exchange for forgiving a false debt. Adrian demanded 25% in exchange for capital. Evelyn demanded only the right to prove value. The difference was impossible to hide. Margaret called for a recess. Shareholders clustered into groups. Numbers moved through the room. Voting agreements, debt covenants, trust positions, board seats. Adrian approached us near the marble staircase. You prepared this overnight, he said. Yes, I replied. It is undercapitalized, then bid on the projects. You are leaving money on the table. We are leaving control off the table. He looked at Evelyn. Samuel will tell you independence is sacred. He will not tell you how many companies die protecting it. Samuel joined us. I also will not tell them to sell before they understand what they own. Adrian glanced between us. You think Victor is the final danger. No, I said. You are. He smiled. That is why you should keep me close, we will. His eyebrows lifted. As a bidder. For the first time, Adrian Vale laughed without calculation. Very well, he walked away. Victor approached next. No lawyers. Just him. The ballroom had emptied around us enough to create the illusion of privacy. He stopped before Evelyn. You think they respect you now? She held his gaze. Yes, the answer surprised him. He had expected doubt. He tried another weapon. You built those systems using years I paid for. I built them during years you stole credit for. I gave you laboratories. You gave me access to equipment in exchange for work that made you hundreds of millions. You were my wife. That was never employment. His mouth tightened. I can still destroy this. How? I control 28%. Today, I control family trusts. Until they review your transfers, I control overseas freeze them. He looked at me. You filled her head with this. Evelyn, you filled her head with this. Noah did not teach me to hate you. Her voice became quieter. You did that alone. Victor's face changed. For 1 second, beneath the rage, I saw the thing he had hidden from everyone. He had believed she would always return. Not because he loved her. Because he could not imagine something he possessed, choosing a life without him. You will lose him too, he said. Men like Noah resent women who become more powerful. I almost answered. Evelyn did not let me. Noah made me equal when he had $43. She looked toward the ballroom where Victor had once laughed at us. You made me invisible when you had everything. Victor had no response. The session resumed at noon. Margaret presented 3 resolutions: permanent removal of Victor Hale as chief executive and board chair, cancellation of the Rion acquisition and recovery of transferred funds, authorization for a 90-day Cross Meridian audit and performance contract process across Hale's 7 underperforming divisions. The votes came in electronically. Victor watched the screen. The first resolution passed with 68%. Permanent removal. His title disappeared. The second passed with 74%. The Rayon deal died. Atlantic Crown began returning the $180 million. The third passed with 81%. Cross Meridian entered Hale Industrial not as stolen property, not as a subsidiary, not as a favor. As a contractor, the shareholders chose over Victor. He stood motionless beneath the chandeliers. Then Margaret read a fourth resolution: referral of executive conduct, intercompany transfers, ownership misrepresentations, regulatory submissions, and potential evidence interference to federal and state authorities. Victor looked toward Marcus. Marcus voted yes. Celeste's family representatives voted yes. Margaret voted yes. Adrian Vale voted yes. The resolution passed. Security approached. Victor did not fight this time. His body seemed to understand before his pride did. The color drained from his face. His fingers loosened around the back of a chair. For one moment, I thought he might fall. Instead, he turned toward Evelyn. "Do not do this." The words were barely audible. The same man who had thrown her suitcases onto marble now stood in front of the same crowd asking her for mercy. She did not move. He came closer. "Tell them the work was ours." "No." "Tell them the complaint was a misunderstanding." "No." "Tell them I supported you." "No." His hand reached for her sleeve. I caught his wrist before he touched her. "Not hard." Victor looked at me. I remembered his glass raised above the laughing ballroom. His exact words: "Consider her your reward for loyalty." I leaned close enough that only he could hear. "You gave me your most valuable asset because you thought she was worthless." His eyes filled with something beyond anger. "Recognition," I continued. "That was the last decision you made as a powerful man." I released his wrist. Security escorted him away. At the ballroom doors, he looked back once. Nobody followed, not Celeste, not Marcus, not Margaret, not the directors. The doors closed behind him. That was the public end. The private ruin continued. Rion terminated Malcolm Voss and entered a cooperation agreement with investigators. Daniel Mercer provided financial records linking North Quay payments to Rion executives and communications from Victor's office. Warren Pike pleaded guilty to industrial fraud and sabotage-related charges. The false federal complaint became part of a broader obstruction investigation. Victor's family trusts removed his voting authority pending litigation. His personal credit lines were frozen after lenders reviewed guarantees tied to Hale stock. Celeste ended the engagement through counsel. The penthouse returned to Hale Holdings. The cars returned to Hale Holdings. The staff stopped answering his calls. 3 months later, prosecutors charged him with fraud, obstruction, unlawful corporate transfers, and conspiracy connected to the sabotage of Cross Meridian's pilot. He was not convicted overnight. Rich men rarely fell quickly, but he fell completely. Every court appearance produced another photograph. Every filing repeated Evelyn's name as the inventor whose work he had misrepresented. The credit he stole became the evidence that destroyed him. Cross Meridian spent the next 90 days inside Hale's factories. We did not save all 7 divisions. 2 were too damaged. 1 carried environmental liabilities larger than its remaining business. We told the truth. Hale sold those 3 under controlled restructuring. The other 4 received Meridian grid installations. Energy costs fell between 22 and 37%. Production downtime declined. Margins returned. Workers who expected closures received new contracts. Adrian Vale financed 2 project vehicles after losing competitive bids on 3 others. He complained about the returns, then invested more. Samuel called that progress. Anthony Russo opened a second fabrication line. Priya became Cross Meridian's chief systems officer. Carlos led field operations. Lena received the first production system at Russo Artisan Foods and refused a discount because she wanted the invoice framed. Mr. Bell expanded Meridian Grid across all 80 dryers, then installed it at 4 additional plants. Dana ensured every deployment. Rebecca protected the patents with the aggression of someone who enjoyed sending letters that ruined weekends. Marcus remained chief legal officer during Hale's transition. Margaret became interim chair. Ethan Cole led the new independent safety office. 1 year after the Halcyon shareholder session, Cross Meridian's contracted revenue passed $200 million. Our valuation passed $1 billion. The financial press called me a billionaire on paper. They called Evelyn the architect of the Industrial Recovery Revolution. For once, her name appeared before the executives. I kept the truck. The heater still did not work. I kept the apartment above the laundromat too, though the laundromat reopened beneath it with a Meridian unit connected to every dryer. The folding table moved into our first headquarters. We placed it inside the lobby beneath glass. Evelyn thought that was ridiculous. I agreed. Then did it anyway. Her 4 black notebooks went into a fireproof archive. Not because paper could be stolen. Because history could. On the second anniversary of the night Victor threw her out, we returned to the Halcyon Grand. There was no gala, no cameras. Only dinner in a quiet room overlooking the city. Evelyn wore green. I wore my uncle's watch. The scratches remained. We had repaired the strap but not polished the case. Some damage deserved to stay visible. After dinner, we walked down the marble staircase. She stopped at the exact place where the suitcases had landed. "You remember?" I asked. "Everything. Do you regret coming with me?" She looked at the ballroom, at the chandeliers, at the floor where Victor believed he had ended her life. "No." Then she looked at me. "I regret waiting until he forced me to leave." I took a small box from my pocket. Her eyes narrowed. "Noah, I know you dislike diamonds. I dislike expensive apologies disguised as jewelry. This is not an apology." I opened the box. Inside was a simple ring set with a dark green stone. No company account. No executive gift budget. No hidden clause. I had paid for it myself. She stared at it. "Are you asking because we are rich?" "No." "Because Victor is gone?" "No." "Because the newspapers already think we are together?" "No." "Then why?" I looked toward the ballroom doors. "Because when you had $14 and I had $43.19, you shook my hand and built a life with me." Her eyes filled. I smiled. "And because you kept correcting the 19 cents. She laughed through the tears. Then she held out her hand. "Yes." I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. Of course it did. Evelyn had measured her own finger 3 months earlier while designing a sensor ring for factory technicians. I had stolen the number, she realized immediately. "You used my prototype measurements." I learned from Victor. Her smile vanished. I raised both hands. "Bad joke. Terrible." She closed her fist. "No." We stood together beneath the chandeliers. No one laughed. No one watched. The room no longer belonged to Victor's memory. It belonged to the decision we made after he tried to break us. He threw away his ex-wife as punishment. He believed he had handed a bankrupt waiter a burden. Instead, he gave me my partner. She gave me a future. And together we took everything he had mistaken for his own.